Black and White by Liu Jiming. Translated by Chen Gang. Part 1. Volume 2, Chapter 1. 1. Go to grandparents' house. Not long after the start of school in September, Gu Zheng went to her grandparents' house. From Dongjiang University to Dongjiang Iron and Steel Plant, Gu Zheng first took bus number 15 at the university gate, which took half an hour to reach Dragon Temple. Then, she transferred to bus number 702 and got off at Renjia Road after about 40 minutes. After that, she walked for 15 minutes or took a motorized tricycle, which took about 10 minutes to reach Dongjiang Iron and Steel Plant. Dongjiang Iron and Steel Plant, commonly known as Donggang and also referred to as Steel City, comprised two main areas, the factory zone and the dormitory zone. This place used to belong to the suburbs of Dongjiang City and was the main garbage dumping ground of the city. Looking around, garbage was everywhere, and the stench was overwhelming. In the late 1950s, red brick and tile factory buildings, tall steelmaking furnaces, and chimneys rose from the ground. They built a modern, large-scale steel enterprise here in just a few years. The dormitory area of Donggang had a quite poetic name, Steel Flower Village. Every street was named after number X, Xth Street, Steel Flower Village, where Gu Zheng's maternal grandparents live. When Gu Zheng first arrived at her grandparents' house, she had trouble sleeping at night and often dreamed all night long. In her dreams, she repeatedly saw the scene of her mother drowning. Her brother Zhong Tianyi's bloody red lance, the embroidered building covered with green vines, the ground littered with withered leaves, and a beautiful woman with her hair down, riding the wind over the pond, laughing eerily. Gu Zheng was always awakened by laughter, her body shrinking into a ball, and she kept calling out, "Mom! Mom!" Opening her eyes, she found herself lying in her grandmother's arms. Her grandmother looked anxious and kept wiping her cold, sweat-drenched face, neck, and back with a towel. Her grandfather, who was also nervous, stood beside her. Grandpa and Grandma were already in their 50s at that time. They had a son, Gu Xiaolu, who was 1 year younger than Gu Zheng and was in the 6th grade at Donggang Children's Primary School. According to seniority, Gu Zheng should call Gu Xiaolu little uncle, but she always found it difficult to say it. Gu Zheng was in the 1st grade of Donggang Children's Middle School, 1 grade higher than Gu Xiaolu, and she felt it was difficult to call him little uncle. Her grandparents' house had 2 bedrooms, 1 large and 1 small. Her grandparents lived in the large one, while Gu Xiaolu lived in the small one. When Gu Zheng arrived, her grandparents initially planned for her to share the small bedroom with Gu Xiaolu. However, considering both children were already in middle school, they later had Gu Zheng stay with her grandmother and Gu Xiaolu stay with my grandfather. Grandparents doted excessively on Gu Xiaolu. Normally, deciding what to cook at home was not up to the grandparents, but Gu Xiaolu had the final say. However, since Gu Zheng arrived, this situation had changed somewhat. In the past, when the family made delicious food, the grandparents were eager to give it all to Gu Xiaolu alone. Now, with the addition of Gu Zheng, every time the grandmother puts food in her son Gu Xiaolu's bowl, she also remembers to put some for her granddaughter Gu Zheng. When shopping for clothes and shoes, Gu Xiaolu and Gu Zheng each got one. Sometimes, even the portion given to Gu Zheng was more than that given to Gu Xiaolu. Gu Zheng had a vague feeling that there was always a sense of guilt towards her mother in her grandparents' hearts. After her mother's death, her grandparents transformed this guilt into affection and transferred it to Gu Zheng. Gu Xiaolu didn't understand their feelings towards Gu Zheng. Once, her grandmother bought an octagonal music box at the mall and gave it to Gu Zheng, saying it was a reward for her being selected as an outstanding student in the entire school. This time, Gu Xiaolu refused to accept it. At dinner, he locked herself in his bedroom and refused to come out, protesting with a hunger strike. Her grandparents were frantically pacing around the room, not knowing what to do. Later, it was Gu Zheng who took the initiative to offer the octagonal music box to Gu Xiaolu, which resolved the crisis. When Gu Zheng was studying at Town Primary School, she had excellent grades. After following her grandparents to Donggang Children's Middle School, her grades remained among the top. She was even awarded the title of Outstanding Student. As for Gu Shoulu, let alone being an outstanding student, he was always among the last few in class during exams. His grandparents were worried about him and would criticize him in front of Gu Zheng, urging him to learn from her. Gu Shoulu readily agreed, but behind Gu Zheng's back, he asked Gu Zheng to do his homework for him. When Gu Zheng refused, he would adopt a domineering attitude and ask, "Are my parents your grandparents?" Gu Zheng nodded and he asked again, "Am I your younger uncle?" Gu Zheng nodded again. "Your grandparents want you to help your younger uncle with his studies. Were you willing to obey?" Gu Zheng said, "My grandparents asked me to help you with your studies, but they didn't ask me to do your homework for you." Gu Shoulu twisted his neck and said domineeringly, "I just want you to help me with my homework, so what? You eat and drink at my house and were unwilling to help with this little favor? That's really unfair." This sentence deeply hurt Gu Zheng's heart. At night, she hid in the quilt and cried secretly. When her grandmother found out, she asked, "Zheng, why were you crying? Did your little uncle bully you?" Gu Zheng didn't answer, but simply said, "Grandma, I want to go home." Upon hearing this, Grandma hugged Gu Zheng tightly and said affectionately, "Child, your parents were no longer there, and your brother is nowhere to be found. How can you still have a home?" From then on, Gu Zheng became even more reticent. When alone, she would always think of Pai Town, of the home with purple-tiled roofs, of her mother and brother. Her mother was no longer around, but her brother was still there. He would come to her grandparents' house one day and bring her back. Gu Zheng fantasized and prayed like this until she was about to graduate from junior high school. One day after school, she saw her grandparents talking to a tall, handsome, and dashing young man in the living room. When Gu Zheng entered, her grandmother said, Zheng, look who's here." Gu Zheng was surprised, momentarily unable to react. The young man stood up from the sofa, smiling at her, and said, "Little sister, I'm here to pick you up." Gu Zheng then recognized it was her brother Zhong Tianyi, and tears streamed down her face. Zhong Tianyi said, "Your brother is making a lot of money in business now, and he's going to send you to Chuzhou Middle School to study in high school." Chuzhou Middle School was a key middle school in the province. Its annual college entrance examination enrollment rate was over 80%, ranking first in the province and surpassing the enrollment rate of the affiliated high school of the renowned Dongjiang University. Being admitted to Chuzhou Middle School was equivalent to being admitted to the university. "I don't expect you to enter Beijing University or Tsinghua University. As long as you can get into Dongjiang University like your parents did, that's all," Zhong Tianyi continued. He wore a suit and tie with a light mustache on his upper lip. His tone was so confident that Gu Zheng felt a bit uncomfortable. She wanted to ask her brother where he made the money, but ultimately didn't. Zhong Tianyi didn't lie. Indeed, he sent Gu Zheng to Chuzhou Middle School. Later, as she had wished, Gu Zheng also successfully got admitted to Dongjiang University. Everything came so smoothly that Gu Zheng found it hard to believe whenever she thought about it. After being admitted to Dongjiang University, it was the first time Gu Zheng had visited her grandparents. She only wrote a letter to her grandparents during this period after receiving the college entrance examination admission notice. She called them once during the second semester of her freshman year. Her grandmother reminded her to visit them during the school holidays, but Gu Zheng never went. For some reason, Gu Zheng could never develop that kind of affection for her grandparents, even after living with them for a few years after her mother's drowning. Her brother was also like this. Whenever he mentioned his grandparents, he would have a cold expression. This time, if it weren't for her grandmother calling and saying that her grandfather was turning 60 and asking Gu Zheng to go and celebrate his birthday no matter what, and also asking her brother to go, "Apart from Xiaolu, you and your brother were the only two relatives we have besides your grandfather and me." Her grandmother sobbed softly on the other end of the phone. Gu Zheng's heart softened immediately, and she hurriedly promised, "Grandma, don't cry, I will definitely come to see you and Grandpa." But she didn't promise to ask her brother to come. Zhong Tianyi was very busy with his business now. Whether or not he could spare time, even if he could, Gu Zheng was not sure he could come. Even after getting off the number 702 bus, Gu Zheng still hadn't escaped this confusion. 2. Birthday banquet. It was already past 10 in the morning when Gu Zheng knocked on her grandparents' door, carrying a large cake she had bought at the market on Renjia Road. It was Gu Xiaolu, her younger uncle, who opened the door. Gu Xiaolu, who followed his grandmother, was not tall, standing 5.5 feet 0.3 feet shorter than Gu Zheng. However, his body was well proportioned, making him appear less short. Gu Xiaolu's appearance also resembled his grandmother, a long face, double eyelids, long eyelashes, and 2 shallow dimples on his cheeks when he smiled. For a moment, Gu Zheng seemed to see his mother's shadow. Seeing Gu Zheng carefully sizing him up, Gu Xiaolu's face blushed slightly. He was wearing headphones, obviously listening to some music, and walking as if stepping to the beat of the music. He nodded at Gu Zheng as a greeting, took the cake from Gu Zheng's hand, placed it on the dining table in the center of the living room, and went back to his room. Gu Zheng couldn't believe the shy young man before her was the naughty and overbearing uncle a few years ago. She was stunned when her grandmother came out of the kitchen. She was staring blankly when her grandmother came out of the kitchen. She wiped her wet hands on her apron, and while cordially taking Gu Zheng's hand, she squinted her eyes and scrutinized her up and down, muttering, "I haven't seen you in a few years, so I have to have a good look at you. Oh, you're even taller than Xiaolu." She glanced at the cake on the dining table and added, "Child, what cake were you buying? I ordered one last night. Your grandfather just went out and brought it back in a while." After several years of not seeing each other, Gu Zheng noticed that her grandmother's hair had turned significantly grayer, and she seemed more naggy than before. She pulled Gu Zheng to sit on the sofa and shouted into Gu Xiaolu's room, "Xiaolu, why were you hiding in your room when Gu Zheng is here? Is it because your niece got into a prestigious university while you, as her uncle, only managed to get into a junior college, making you feel embarrassed?" Seeing that Gu Xiaolu didn't respond, she sighed and said, "Alas, your little uncle is getting increasingly useless. Your grandfather and I were worried to death." Gu Zheng listened to her grandmother while sizing up the 2-bedroom house. Although Gu Zheng had spent 2 or 3 years in this home and was intimately familiar with it, she still felt an indescribable sense of strangeness. The living room was not significant, covering at most 10 square meters. Apart from a dining table and a sofa set, there was no room for anything else. Blue and white floor tiles covered the living room, smooth as mirrors and spotlessly clean. Gu Zheng remembered that during summer and winter vacations, the only household chore her grandmother assigned to her and Gu Xiaolu was to mop the floor. However, every time Gu Xiaolu would let Gu Zheng do his work, Gu Zheng was quite willing to help her younger uncle. She felt 1 year older than Gu Xiaolu, so helping him with some work was appropriate. Therefore, she never revealed this to her grandmother. In the wall's corner stood an old sewing machine, covered with a white knitted curtain. Her grandmother brought it from Shanghai. Her grandmother was an able housewife. The bedding, curtains, and sofa covers in the house were all sewn by her with a sewing machine. Several picture frames and certificates of merit hung on the wall facing the door. Once, my grandmother pointed to a photo of 3 people and said, "The one in the middle is your mother. She was only 2 or 3 years old at that time. Your grandfather and I came back to Shanghai from the northwest to visit relatives, and we took this photo at a photo studio." When my grandmother said this, her eyes turned a little red. Gu Zheng's gaze lingered on her mother for a long time. Gu Ying, 3 years old, had a round face and a pair of big black eyes like 2 glass balls. This was the only photo of the grandparents and mother that Gu Zheng had seen. Most of the awards on the wall belonged to Grandpa, among which was a steel medal awarded by the Dongjiang Steel Factory, which was particularly eye-catching. It read, "Awarded the title of Provincial Model Worker in 1970 to Comrade Gu Jirjun, Dongjiang Provincial Federation of Trade Unions, May 1st, 1973. Gu Zheng remembered Grandpa's name from then on, Gu Jirjun. Grandpa hung the metal in the center of the wall and covered it with glass to prevent rust, showing how much he cherished it. Gu Zheng saw that someone had hung a new frame next to the metal. Upon closer inspection, I saw Grandpa's retirement commemorative certificate. Comrade Gu Jir-jun worked at Dongjiang Steel Company, formerly Dongjiang Steel Factory, from 1958 to 1988 and retired honorably in June 1988. The only award certificate Grandma had hanging on the wall was the certificate of her winning the Gu Zheng competition when she was young. Gu Zheng remembered Grandma's name from then on, Su Wanyun. At that monument, Grandpa came back, carrying a cake even bigger than the one Gu Zheng had bought. In Gu Zheng's impression, her grandfather always wore a blue denim work uniform and wouldn't change, even when he came home. He emitted a powerful scent of machine oil. Usually it was her grandmother who took care of household affairs, and her grandfather rarely interfered, including in the education of Gu Shoulu, which was also her grandmother's decision. Her grandfather was an engineer at the rolling steel branch of Dongjiang Iron and Steel Plant. Besides working during the day, he was also busy with work after returning home in the evening, and he often went on business trips, which could last for 10 days or half a month. Because of being too busy, her grandfather rarely had time to shave his beard. Her grandmother would nag him several times every time his beard grew long before he reluctantly went to the barber's. Compared to her grandmother, who was very tidy and always dressed neatly, her grandfather's appearance could be described as sloppy. But then the grandfather who appeared before Gu Zheng seemed to have changed into a different person. He wore a neatly pressed Zhongshan suit, shaved his beard cleanly, and combed his hair meticulously. He looked both decent and energetic. Compared to a few years ago, he not only didn't look old, but he seemed to be a few years younger and didn't look 60 years old at all. Gu Yung couldn't help but think that her grandfather must have been a very handsome when he was young. Gu Yung recalled the scene when her grandfather took the opportunity to go to Pai Town on a business trip, which was the first time she had seen him. She was a little confused about whether her mother looked like her grandmother or grandfather. The lunch was exceptionally sumptuous, filling the entire table. Apart from Gu Zheng's favorites, braised bream and mushroom chicken soup, there were also crabs, which she rarely ate. The fall crabs were big and plump, filling the plates with just 4. Next to the plates was an exquisite small bowl containing a sauce made of vinegar, soy sauce, garlic, and ginger. Gu Zheng had expected a birthday celebration, but before the meal began, her grandfather took the liberty to cut the cake into several portions and served it on the table. Her grandmother looked a little perplexed and said, "You cut the cake before blowing out the candles?" Grandpa sat down at the head of the table and smiled disapprovingly. "Let's not engage in those bourgeois trappings. Besides, it's too inauspicious to blow out the lamp and pull out the wax when people were alive and well." When Gu Zheng first heard such an interpretation of the birthday ceremony, she felt that her grandfather's words were not unreasonable and couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, Gu Xiaolu emerged from his small room, adopting an air of entitlement, looking even more like a guest than Gu Zheng. Gu Zheng only now noticed the large words printed on his t-shirt. Graduation souvenir of 1988 Steel Institute. Steel Institute is an abbreviation for Dongjiang Iron and Steel Institute. Gu Zheng had forgotten that the schooling period at the Steel Institute was 2 years and asked, "Has little uncle graduated already?" "Now that he has graduated, he is mad at your grandpa about his job assignment," Grandma said as she picked up a crab for each of Gu Zheng and Gu Xiaolu. She also broke off the crab legs for Gu Xiaolu as she had in the past, opened the crab shell, and scooped out the crab roe with chopsticks. She told Gu Zheng that the Dongjiang Iron and Steel Plant was publicly recruiting administrative staff. Gu Xiaolu had already signed up and wanted Grandpa to say hello to the factory leaders. However, he was unwilling to say hello and opposed Gu Xiaolu's registration and insisted that his son start as a worker. He said that no matter whether the Iron and Steel College graduates will become technicians or cadres, they must first begin as workers. He said that if they sit in an office right after graduation, they will be like flowers in a greenhouse. They cannot withstand the wind and rain, so what future will they have? Listen, your grandpa still thinks we are young now, and he is holding Xiao Lu to the standard of a model worker. Grandpa was pouring himself a drink when he interrupted Grandma in a grumpy tone after hearing her words. Xiao Lu has already graduated from college. Can't you let him eat crabs by himself? Gu Zheng remembered that whenever they ate in the past, her grandmother would eagerly feed the dishes into Gu Xiaolu's mouth. At this moment, being scolded by her grandfather, her face seemed embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, she withdrew her hand and wanted to help Gu Zheng crack the crab legs. Gu Zheng quickly said, "Grandma, I can do it myself." "If you keep spoiling him like this, he'll need someone to help him walk. When will he truly grow up?" Grandpa continued scolding Grandma, but before he could finish, Gu Xiaolu, sitting opposite, pushed the bowl in front of him. The crab legs in the bowl rolled out one after another, and the sauce and vinegar in the condiment bowl spilled all over the floor. "Dad, don't worry. Even if I lose my job, I won't let you worry about it," Gu Xiaolu almost shouted at his grandfather, his face turning red. "You think this is a good way to show your spirit, right?" Grandpa sarcastically told his son. "If you lose your job, you'll still have to eat what your mother and I." His father's public reproach in front of Gu Zheng likely hurt Gu Xiaolu's self-esteem. Pouting, he left the dining table and went back to his room. Grandpa stopped Grandma from calling Gu Xiaolu back. "Don't call him. A meal without food won't kill anyone. In your heart, that model worker hat on your head is more important than Xiaolu." Grandma, distressed for her son, finally couldn't hold it in any longer. "I'm not as hard-hearted as you. I've already lost one daughter, and I don't want my son to suffer any more injustice." As Grandma spoke, tears welled up in her eyes. Upon hearing this, Grandpa's head drooped like a frostbitten eggplant, and he stared at the wine glass in front of him with an ashen face, without saying a word. Gu Yong was at a loss. Grandma's last words reminded her of her deceased mother. Because she was going to the writer's class with Li Hung in the afternoon, Gu Zheng returned to Dongjiang University after lunch at her grandparents' house. 3. Maple Garden. The female law students lived in dormitory 503 in Osmanthus Garden, while the female Chinese students resided in dormitory 504. A narrow path leads between the two buildings to the cafeteria. Because of the narrowness of the path, it was always bustling and crowded during mealtimes, resembling a market. When Gu Zheng returned to her dormitory, it was just 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which was also the time she had arranged with Li Hung. At this time, most people were still taking their afternoon naps. Downstairs, apart from 2 boys who seemed to be waiting for their girlfriends, craning their necks to look up at the girls' dormitory, no one else was visible. Just as she was hesitating whether to go back to her dormitory to change clothes, she saw Li Hung gracefully emerging from dormitory 504. Li Hung and Gu Zheng arranged the interview with female writer Song Shou-fan in the writer's class last Friday. Gu Zheng initially didn't want to go, but couldn't resist Li Hung's repeated invitations. After all, she was a member of the Long Tosha Literary Club. Besides, since reading Song Shou-fan's novel last time, she had developed a particular curiosity about the writer herself, so she agreed. It was evident that Li Hung had put in a serious effort for today's interview. She wore a white shirt on top, a red skirt on the bottom, and a big flared skirt with a hem almost reaching her heels. She carried an exquisite purple leather small clutch bag on her shoulder, looking both dignified and elegant, yet fashionable and beautiful. In contrast, as usual, Gu Zheng appeared to be very student-like and dressed casually. She had 2 ear-length braids tied on her head, wore a beige shirt on top, and some old jeans on the bottom, looking like a freshman just entering school. Unlike many girls who like to highlight their gender characteristics deliberately, Gu Zheng's dress appeared very gender-neutral. Coupled with the fact that she never wore makeup, her face, originally full of feminine beauty, displayed a sculptural sense of coldness and arrogance. The two were about the same height, but today Li Hung wore high heels, while Gu Zheng wore flat shoes with laces, making Li Hung 2 centimeters taller than Gu Zheng. Aren't you going back to the dormitory to change clothes? Li Hung looked at her watch and said, I have an appointment with Song Shou Fan at 3 o'clock, from Osmanthus Garden to Maple Garden, which takes at most a quarter of an hour. No, let's go, said Gu Zhong. Maple Garden was a newly renovated graduate dormitory area at Dongjiang University. Although the school only issued undergraduate diplomas to the writers' class, the students were young and middle-aged writers recruited from all over the country. Some of them had even won national awards and had considerable fame. Therefore, the school arranged for them to stay in Maple Garden, according to the accommodation standards for graduate students. The campus of Dongjiang University sat on the banks of the Dongjiang River, constructed along the mountain known as the renowned Mount Pipa. Mount Pipa was not tall, with the highest peak reaching an elevation of less than 500 meters. The mountain sloped steeply from the west to the east, stretching out windingly. Legend had it that the Tang dynasty poet Bei Ju Yi once lived in seclusion here in his later years and penned the poem Mountain Pipa. To the north of Mount Pipa lay the rolling Dongjiang River flowing eastward. With Mount Pipa as its axis, Dongjiang University divided the campus into 4 sections: Plum Garden, Osmanthus Garden, Peach Garden, and Maple Garden. The Plum Garden on the mountain's north side served as the administrative and teaching area, while the Peach Garden on the east side was the faculty dormitory area. The Osmanthus Garden on the south side was the undergraduate dormitory area, and the Maple Garden on the west side, bordering the Dongjiang River, was once occupied by the Provincial Party Committee as a sanatorium. It boasted a beautiful environment and pleasant climate, and some leaders of Dongjiang Province enjoyed vacationing here. A few years ago, because of the campus's overall development and construction needs, Dongjiang University submitted a request to the Provincial Party Committee to return the Maple Garden Sanatorium to the university. After approval, Maple Garden again became part of the Dongjiang University campus. During the anti-Japanese War, Maple Garden was the office location for the Dongjiang Bureau of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. To this day, the former residence of Dongjiang Bureau leader Zhong Da was preserved there. It was said that the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee leaders once hesitated over whether to preserve Zhong Da's former residence. In the fall of 1958, during Chairman Mao Zedong's inspection of Dongjiang, he even stayed at Maple Garden. During that visit, Mao Zedong instructed the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee leaders to preserve Zhong Da's former residence. He said, although Zhong Da later betrayed the party and defected to the enemy, he was still a good scholar. Even Mr. Lu Xun praised him. Zhong Da was a professor at Dongjiang University in the 1930s and was a well-known left-wing cultural figure. The historical changes of Maple Garden were all introduced in the Student Handbook of Dongjiang University that every new student receives upon enrollment, so few people were unaware of them. From Osmanthus Garden to Maple Garden, there were 2 paths. One was the asphalt avenue leading to the library, and the other was the narrow path through the forest next to the gymnasium. Li Hung led the way into the narrow path in the woods, and Gu Zhong hesitated for a moment before following her. The forest was home to a wide variety of trees, including pine, cypress, cedar, fir, maple, crepe myrtle, and ginkgo, as well as rare species such as linden and boxwood. Even professional botany students may not recognize all of them. It resembled a small botanical garden, lush with vegetation and fragrant with flowers, where birds chirp and flowers bloom. It was not only the best place for students of Dongjiang University to read and review their lessons in the morning, but also a secluded and delightful spot for couples to rendezvous. Therefore, people also called this forest Lover's Forest. During her freshman year, Gu Zhong would come to the forest every morning to read English for an hour to prepare for her exam. One day, as she walked back and forth in the forest, reciting English, something stuck to her foot. She tried to shake it off several times, but failed. When she lifted her foot, she saw a round, white tubular film attached to the sole of her shoe. She bent down and reached out to pick up the tubular film covered in sticky juice and emitting a fishy smell. At that moment, a female cleaning worker in her 40s pushed a garbage truck along the gravel path in the woods. Gu Jung held up the tubular film and asked the cleaning worker, "Auntie, what is this?" The female cleaning worker looked at it and said, "Condom. I see several of them in these woods every day." She looked at Gu Jung with surprise and suspicion. "You must be a freshman. No wonder." Gu Jung blushed immediately when she heard that. She felt as if she had been burned. She threw the fishy-smelling condom into the garbage truck and ran out of the forest as fast as she could. From then on, she never went to the lovers' forest for morning reading again. Now, Gu Jung and Li Hung walked onto the small path paved with stones in the middle of the lovers' forest. As it was a weekend afternoon, the forest was tranquil, with no sound of loud morning reading or birds chirping. Dense trees covered the ground with thick fallen leaves. Occasionally, a gust of wind would blow, causing a few golden yellow fallen leaves to spin and fly up, only to fall into the grass like injured birds. Li Hung raised her face and took a deep breath, stretching her arms as if to embrace something. She said thoughtfully, "Some people say that if you don't go on a date with your boyfriend in the lover's forest, it's like going to Dongjiang University in vain. Gu Jung, do you agree with this?" When Gu Jung saw Li Hung say this, her cheeks turned red. She knew that Li Hung was already in love, and her boyfriend was the renowned Professor Lang Tao. Of course, their relationship had not been made public yet. Li Hung had only confided in a few close friends, including Gu Jung. "Last weekend, Lang Tao and I watched a movie and then walked in the woods," Li Hung whispered in Gu Jung's ear, her tone revealing an unmistakable sweetness. Seeing Gu Jung remain silent, she turned her head and asked seriously, "Gu Jung, were you in love? Your only flaw is this androgynous look. If you spruce yourself up a bit, I wonder how many boys would chase after you. Once you fall in love with someone, everything will change, including your appearance." Li Hung sounded as if she was giving a stern warning. However, Gu Jung didn't pick up on her remark. She seemed to have smelled a strong, fishy smell coming from the lovers' forest, making her feel like vomiting. At this point, they had already walked out of the lovers' forest and embarked on a shaded path that wound its way towards the riverbank. Not far ahead, they would reach Maple Garden. The writers' class lived in a 4-story Soviet-style building, originally the main building of the Provincial Party Committee Sanatorium, constructed in the 1950s. After being acquired by Dongjiang University, it served as the office building for the graduate school before being converted into dormitories for the writers' class. Song Shoufan lived in dormitory 203. Li Hung gently tapped twice, and the door opened. Standing in front of her was a woman with a beautiful face and elegant demeanor. She was about 30 years old and had short hair. She wore a soft, textured dress and a light red cardigan over it. She had beautiful almond-shaped eyes and slightly arched eyebrows, giving off an air of aloofness or reserve. "Excuse me, were you teacher Song Shoufan?" Li Hung asked politely. "I'm Li Hung from Long Taosha Literary Club." "Hello, I'm Song Shoufan." The other person smiled and extended a hand to shake Li Hung's. In her other hand, she held a quite thick open book. Gu Jung glanced at it and saw that it was Wolf's, The Lighthouse Keeper. At that moment, Song Shoufan turned her gaze to Gu Jung and extended her hand towards her. When Gu Jung held the other person's hand, she felt her fingers were fair, slender, and delicate. It was her first time meeting a female writer, and she was a little nervous. Her palms sweated. "You are—" Song Shoufan's gaze lingered on her face. "Her name is Gu Jung. She's majoring in law, and her poetry is excellent," Li Hung introduced from the side. "Oh, this is quite interesting," Song Shoufan said with a smile, eyeing Gu Jung with interest, yet her hand remained extended. She led Gu Jung back to the room by her hand. "You're a law student, so you must know Shichun, right?" "I've heard the teacher talk about her," Gu Jung nodded and said. Shikun was a renowned jurist in China and also the first female barrister during the Republic of China period. "She wrote poems in college, and Xu Jimo even wrote reviews for her," Song Shoufan said. Her Mandarin was very standard, with cadences and intonations somewhat resembling the tone of stage plays. Li Hung took out several issues of Long To Sha magazine and handed them to Song Shou-fan, saying, "Teacher Song, these were our newly published issues. Please give us your advice." Song Shou-fan took the magazine, gestured for Li Hung and Gu Zheng to sit on the chairs, and then sat down on the edge of the bed. She casually flipped through the magazine and said, "Your magazine is doing quite well. Please give us your support, Teacher Song. We also hope you can serve as a consultant for the Long To Sha Literary Club," Li Hung said respectfully, as if afraid of being rejected, adding, "Professor Lang Tao is also our consultant." "Oh, Lang Tao is also your consultant?" Song Shou-fan hesitated for a moment and readily agreed. The dormitory where Song Shou-fan lived had 4 beds arranged in 2 tiers facing each other. Boxes and miscellaneous items were piled up on the upper bunk, while Song Shou-fan slept on the lower bunk. This room was about the same size as the undergraduate dormitory at Osmanthus Garden, but each room at Osmanthus Garden accommodates 6 to 8 students. The accommodation conditions for the writers' class were luxurious and enviable. The room was tidy and spotless, with a homely atmosphere and a faint fragrance. A separate desk was beside each bed, and a piece of plastic film was used to separate the 2 desks to avoid interference during writing. On Song Shou-fan's desk was a vase made of a beer bottle, with several bright roses inserted inside and crystal-clear water droplets dripping from the petals. Next to the vase was a small mirror frame, in which a color art photo of Song Shou-fan was embedded. Seeing Song Shou-fan close the magazine in her hand, Li Hung took out her notebook and pen, winked at Gu Zheng, and said, "Teacher Song, shall we start the interview?" "Don't take it too seriously whether we interview. I'll get nervous," Song Shou-fan said, like an elder sister to a younger sister. "Let's just chat casually." Every smile and every gesture of Song Shou-fan seemed so elegant. A line of poetry suddenly popped into Gu Zheng's mind. "She is so beautiful, like a ripe begonia." Li Hung primarily conducted the interview, with Gu Zheng taking notes. Li Hung had previously shown Gu Zheng the outline, including questions such as, "How did you embark on the path of literature? Can you talk about your family and life experiences? Who is the writer you admire most? Do you believe there is true love in the world?" The republication of your novel Xiangchun Street by Long To Sha sparked controversy. What were your thoughts on these controversies? Li Hung was not skilled in interviews and mostly read from the interview outline. However, Song Shou-fan did not passively answer her questions one by one. Instead, she selectively answered a few questions. Sometimes, she would suddenly digress from the topic under discussion and shift to another topic. For example, she was defending her novel angrily, saying, "The protagonist's experiences were told to me by my father, but the article criticizing Xiangchun Street claimed that I fabricated false and bizarre plots, as if the critic knew her characters and life better than the author herself. It's outrageous." But then, adopting a tolerant and magnanimous tone, she said, "The author wrote a well-written article criticizing me. I heard the author is a graduate student in Chinese literature, so he lives in Maple Garden. I really want to meet this classmate when I have the chance." She didn't seem to put on airs, and her face was sincere. Li Hung and Gu Zheng couldn't react to Song Shou-fan's stage-like changes in a monument. At the end of the interview, Song Shou-fan saw Li Hung and Gu Zheng at the dormitory entrance. As they said goodbye, she suddenly said to Gu Zheng, "Seeing you reminds me of someone. A relative." She hesitated. "But he's not really a relative. I can only say he was once a family member. I have no blood relationship with him." Gu Zheng was perplexed, and even after leaving the Maple Garden, she still pondered Song Shou-fan's words. "Do you know that Song Shou-fan's father is the vice-governor of our province?" Li Hung's voice was so low it sounded like a whisper. Not long after Song Shou-fan went to the countryside to work, her father used his connections to get her transferred to the Donggang Cultural Troupe. Later, they transferred her to the provincial song and dance troupe as a composer. I heard that Li Xin has a high opinion of Shangchun Street and their relationship is quite special. Who is Li Xin? Li Xin is a big name in the literary world. You don't even know him? Li Hung said, "The movie When We Talk About the Night Rain in Ba Mountain, which was shown at school not long ago, was adapted from Li Xin's novel." Gu Zheng let out an embarrassed, "Oh." Li Hung had many acquaintances in the entertainment circle and loved to spread all kinds of gossip. Gu Zheng had never been interested in this gossip news. 4. Good Girl Restaurant. Gu Zheng and Li Hung returned to the osmanthus garden from the maple garden and parted ways downstairs before returning to their dormitories. The old man at the reception desk of dormitory building 503 had a face full of pockmarks. The girls behind his back called him Pockmarked Dad and had given him the nickname Pockmarked Door God. Pockmarked Dad had a fantastic memory, able to memorize the names and room numbers of every girl in the dormitory building. He was ruthless in enforcing the building rules. Usually, he stood with his hands behind his back at the entrance of the reception desk, monitoring everyone who came in and out. No one who wanted to sneak in could escape his eyes, which were as wide as electric light bulbs. His dignified demeanor indeed resembled that of a door god. According to the regulations governing student dormitory management at Dongjiang University, male students could not enter female dormitories. If a male student wished to meet his girlfriend, he could only enter if the female came downstairs to escort him. Male students were not allowed to stay in the dormitory for more than half an hour. Otherwise, Pockmarked Dad would rush upstairs and forcefully kick them out without explanation. If any female or male student violates the dormitory rules, Pockmarked Dad will not only lose his temper but also record the name of the involved party and report it to their respective department or the security office, making it impossible for them to escape. When Pockmarked Dad lost his temper, his face was so full of pimples that it seemed like they were about to explode, which was very scary. The female students in dormitory building 503 all turn pale at the mention of Pockmarked Dad. Some obedient female students try their best to please Pockmarked Dad and beg him to open a convenient door for them, but they often get a cold shoulder in front of the strictly enforcing Pockmarked Dad. Therefore, many male students were waiting in line outside dormitory building 503 every day to date their girlfriends or visit female classmates or fellow townspeople. Since no male students had ever entered the female dormitory to look for Gu Zheng, she rarely interacted with Pockmarked Dad, let alone had conflicts with him. She even felt Pockmarked Dad might not remember her name and room number. Therefore, when Pockmarked Dad stopped her as she passed by the reception room, she couldn't help but be startled. "Gu Zheng, there's a note for you." When someone went to the girls' dormitory to look for someone absent, it was common to write a note and ask the doorman to deliver it. But Gu Zheng wasn't sure if the note was for her, so she looked doubtfully at the doorman standing at the reception room entrance and asked, "Are you asking me?" Pockmarked Dad ignored Gu Zheng's question and turned around to pick up a note from the windowsill of the reception room and handed it to her. Gu Zheng took the note and read it. It read, "Gu Zheng, Lo Wei and I would like to invite you to dinner. If you can return to the dormitory before 6 p.m., please come to the Good Girl Restaurant. Waheng Sheng this afternoon. Waheng Sheng." Gu Zheng's first reaction to seeing this name was that it belonged to the friend of her brother whom she had met at Lang Tao's lecture last time. Her mind flashed back to those eyes, one with a single eyelid and the other with double eyelids. Gu Zheng raised her head and glanced at the wall clock in the reception room. It was 5:30 in the afternoon, precisely when the cafeteria opened for meals. She hesitated momentarily and returned to walk outside the dormitory building. After taking 2 steps, she turned around and said, "Thank you," to Pockmarked Dad. A hint of a kind smile appeared on Pockmarked Dad's face. Gu Zheng felt this old man was not as fierce as many girls had described. Between the Osmanthus Garden dormitory and the school gate lies a narrow street named Shuiwan Road. The houses along the street were all wooden structures, featuring old-fashioned doors and windows, moss-covered eaves, and uneven yet picturesque roof ridges reminiscent of scenes from an old movie. The area was bustling with small restaurants, food stalls, grocery stores, stationery shops, second-hand bookstores, and privately run inns, creating a vibrant and lively atmosphere. When university students grew tired of the cafeteria food and wanted to improve their meals, or when they had friends or family visiting, they often gathered at these small restaurants for a meal. Good Girl Restaurant was one of them. Gu Zheng rarely dined out at restaurants, not because she lacked money. Apart from tuition fees, her brother Zhong Tianyi gave her 20 yuan of pocket money every month, which was more than enough. The extra money was all spent on books. She recalled that last semester, her classmates had a New Year's Day dinner party at the Good Girl Restaurant. On another occasion, Li Hung insisted on taking her out for a birthday dinner, also at the Good Girl Restaurant. Today, it's the Good Girl Restaurant again. After walking a few steps along Shuiwan Road, she saw the striking signboard of the Good Girl Restaurant. Bold and powerful strokes rendered the three characters Good Girl on a raw wood signboard. Even those who don't understand calligraphy can tell that these were good characters. The owner of the Good Girl Restaurant attached great importance to this signboard and enjoyed telling customers whenever he had time that a professor, surnamed Mo, from Dongjiang University, had inscribed it. Last time when she dined with Li Hung in the restaurant, Gu Zheng heard the restaurant owner say, "I'm an old acquaintance of Professor Mo, and he didn't charge me a penny." There was a sincere pride in his tone. He introduced himself as Xiao, the owner and head chef. His wife worked as a waiter and cashier, and they were the only two people in the restaurant. Boss Xiao was a passionate man with a broad chest and a round waist, resembling a sumo wrestler. The Good Girl Restaurant business was booming, and it was always packed at night. Boss Xiao was busy cooking in the kitchen and rarely had time to show up in the store. The restaurant was much quieter during the day when it was not peak mealtime. After cooking, Boss Xiao sometimes brought the dishes out and chatted with customers. If the conversation went well, he simply pulled up a stool and asked his wife to serve customers a complimentary plate of fried peanuts or spicy radishes. People called Boss Xiao's wife Good Girl, and he named the restaurant after her. Boss Xiao was about 30 years old, while Good Girl looked to be in her early 20s. She was a lovely woman who, contrary to her husband, rarely spoke. She always sat quietly behind the cash register, flipping through a magazine called Popular Cinema, except for carrying trays and cleaning up the store. It was not yet dark, and Gu Zheng saw from afar that many people packed the Good Girl Restaurant. Plumes of steam wafted out, emitting the aroma of stir-fried dishes and alcohol. As usual, Good Girl sat quietly behind the cash register with a large photo of Taiwanese film star Brigitte Lin, presumably torn from Popular Cinema, posted on the wall behind her. Then Gu Zheng saw the person sitting at a table near the wall, with one eye having a single eyelid and the other having double eyelids. He was Wang Shengli. A person with their back to Gu Zheng sat opposite him so she couldn't see his face. Gu Zheng thought he must be the Lo Wei mentioned in Wang Shengli's note. When Gu Zheng walked to the entrance of the Good Girl Restaurant, Wang Shengli also saw her. He stood up, waved to Gu Zheng, and called out, "Gu Zheng!" The person sitting opposite him turned around in response. Gu Zheng felt that the face was familiar, especially the eagle-like eyes that gazed at others and the long hair that covered the ears. Just as Gu Zheng sat down on the bench beside the table, Wang Shengli pointed at the person and said to her, "Lo Wei, do you remember?" Gu Zheng searched her mind but couldn't recall exactly when they had met. "It seems you've forgotten me." Lo Wei shrugged and said, "I even took a photo of you." "Lo Wei, there's me too," Wang Shengli interjected. "That time, your brother treated us to a big meal at Juzhen Garden." Right. How could I forget you, the prodigy? You were studying at Chuzhou Teachers College back then." Lo Wei slapped his forehead and continued to say to Gu Zheng, "At that time, you were still studying at Chuzhou Middle School and didn't like to talk. I can't believe you've now become a top student at Dongjiang University, and the three of us have become alumni." After listening to their conversation, Gu Zheng recalled something. Her brother had solemnly introduced them to her as his two good friends. She smiled apologetically. "So, it's you. The photo you took of me is really great. I've been keeping it in my album, but I remember your name was Du Wei." "His name is Du Wei, and Lo Wei is his pen name when he publishes his works," Wang Sheng introduced solemnly. "Chuzhou now boasts Lo Wei as a famous young photographer, and Dongjiang University has accepted him into its photography class." So that's how it was. Gu Zheng thought it was just like a plot in a novel. What a coincidence. She suddenly remembered something and turned to ask Wang Sheng, "The review of Shangchun Street in La Hengtou Sha was written by you, right?" "Yes," Wang Sheng replied, like a prisoner being interrogated. "The article wasn't well written. It was purely written from the heart. Submitting it to Langtou Sha was just a whim." Gu Zheng wasn't interested in whether or not the article was good. She said curiously, "Wang Sheng, Wang Cheng, this name reminds me of a movie I watched when I was a child." Before she could finish, Du Wei spoke up. "You're referring to Heroic Sons and Daughters, right? The volunteer soldier who shouted Firu at me is called Wang Cheng." Gu Zheng remembered that the sister of Wang Cheng, the volunteer soldier in Heroic Sons and Daughters, was named Wang Fang. She could even sing the insert song from the movie, "Why is spring always in the land and the heroes' lives bloom like flowers?" The lyrics and the music were beautiful. Wang Cheng, what a resounding and timeless name. However, his name was Wang Sheng, so why was he called Wang Cheng? Gu Zheng thought. But she immediately asked herself, why couldn't he be called Wang Cheng? "Why did your father give you such a name? Does he really hope you'll become a hero?" Du Wei asked with a hint of sarcasm. But Wang Sheng remained silent. His face flushed as if someone had exposed his weaknesses. Chapter 2, 1. Wang Shengli. Wang Shengli, the father of Wang Sheng, had joined the Chinese People's Volunteer Army, but before he could go to Kaorua to fight, the United States and China signed an armistice agreement. That day was July 27, 1953, and Wang Shengli's unit had just arrived in Dandong from Chuzhou City on a sealed train. The Korean War ended when they assembled by the Yalu River and were ready to deploy. This became the greatest regret in Wang Shengli's life. In fact, Wang Shengli's physical condition did not meet the requirements for joining the volunteer army to fight in the Korean War. He only had one arm. Injuries sustained during the battle to liberate Chuzhou City, the provincial capital of Dongjiang, disabled Wang Shengli. In the early morning of October 8, 1949, Wang Shengli, the Sharp Knife Company commander of the Vanguard Unit of the Central Plains Field Army's Dazhang Liberation Campaign, led a commando team disguised as military police of the Kuomintang defending troops and infiltrated Dazhang City. At that time, the PLA siege troops had been besieging Dazhang City for nearly a month. To avoid casualties among innocent civilians and minimize the damage to urban facilities, the higher authorities instructed the siege troops to follow the Beiping model, besiege without fighting, force the enemy to surrender, and strive for the peaceful liberation of Dazhang City. The defending force was the 9th Army of the Kuomintang, which had taken part in the Huaihai campaign and was the direct subordinate of the nationalist government's defense minister, Bai Chungshi. Their defense was very stubborn. Although the People's Liberation Army heavily encircled them and they were almost out of ammunition and food, there was no sign of surrender to the PLA. Several negotiations failed between the underground party's representatives in Dazhang City, the attacking troops, and the 9th Army. At that time, Chairman Mao Zedong had already declared the founding of the People's Republic of China at Tiananmen Square. Because of the prolonged siege, food shortages in the city, market fluctuations, and soaring prices, people were constantly dying of hunger on the streets. According to intelligence intercepted by the underground party in Dazhang, Chiang Kai-shek was mobilizing troops to relieve the siege of Dajiang. If successful, it would not only cause the liberation campaign in Dajiang to fail, but also delay the ongoing Dongjiang River crossing campaign by the PLA. This was a golden opportunity that would not come again. After consulting Chairman Mao and the Central Military Commission, the Central Plains Field Army commander launched a general attack on Dajiang City. The underground party in Dajiang sent a liaison to meet the Sharp Knife Company. The comrade, who was about 20 years old, spoke with a local accent, wore a pair of myopia glasses, resembled an intellectual, and acted cautiously but was very capable, revealing a unique alertness and sharpness characteristic of underground workers. Under his leadership, Wang Shengli and the Sharp Knife Company successfully passed through the tight defense lines of the enemy in the city, launched a surprise attack on the central command of the 9th Army, the city defense headquarters, and captured the Lieutenant General Commander Liu Pengfei alive. Subsequently, based on the deployment map of the Dajiang City Defense Forces drawn by the underground party, the attacking troops bombed the enemy's key fortifications and defense areas. Within 2 days of the start of the general attack, the Dajiang defense line, which the Kuomintang garrison claimed to be impregnable, collapsed. During the fierce street battles that concluded the liberation of Dajiang, an enemy grenade injured Wang Shengli, resulting in the loss of his left arm. While recovering in the military hospital, Wang Shengli read a news article titled "Planting the Red Flag in the Heart of the Enemy," written by our correspondent Liu Jiming in a newly published Dajiang Daily. The article recounted his experience assisting the Sharp Knife Company in launching a surprise attack on the enemy's city defense headquarters. Taking advantage of the confusion and emptiness, the soldiers of the People's Liberation Army's Sharp Knife Company charged toward the Kuomintang City Defense Headquarters like ferocious tigers. Faced with the suddenly appearing People's Liberation Army soldiers, who were like heavenly soldiers and generals, the enemy was surprised and had no time to organize effective resistance before being disarmed. The Lieutenant General Commander of the City Defense Headquarters, Liu Pengfei, was also captured. The general attack began. Amidst the deafening sound of artillery fire from the People's Liberation Army, Comrade Wang Shengli, the commander of the Sharp Knife Company, and I climbed to the roof of the City Defense Headquarters, tore down the Kuomintang's blue sky and white sun flag, and hung a bright 5-star red flag on the flagpole. I gazed at the flag rising slowly, filled with excitement and tears. Dajiang City, which had been ruled and ravaged by the Kuomintang, was finally liberated. We won. The people have won. Seeing his name appear in the newspaper for the first time, Wang Shengli felt very proud. Of course, he also remembered the author of the article, Liu Jiming, the bespectacled underground party liaison who had helped him and the Sharp Knife Company infiltrate the city and raid the city defense headquarters. For leading the Sharp Knife Company to infiltrate the city, taking out the enemy's city defense headquarters in one fell swoop during the battle to liberate the Dajiang, the Army awarded Wang Shengli the second-class Meritorious Service Medal and a Liberation Medal. When the award was presented, Wang Shengli was still recovering from his injuries in the PLA field hospital. The city's new field hospital, filled with injured PLA commanders and soldiers from the Dajiang Liberation Battle, housed Wang Shengli. Every day, the hospital discharged people, transferring them to civilian areas as revolutionary disabled soldiers instead of returning them to their units. Before entering the city, Wang Shengli had just undergone an amputation surgery. At first, he refused to undergo the surgery, pleading, "Chairman Mao and Commander-in-Chief Zhu have issued the order to liberate all of China. I cannot fall behind. I still want to stay in the army to fight and liberate all of China. If I lose this arm, how can I continue the revolution?" He held on to the arm of the hospital director and cried. The director, a surgical expert who had assisted Dr. Bethune during the anti-Japanese war, could not help but soften his heart upon hearing Wang Shengli's plea. An amputation surgery was necessary. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. However, moved by Wang Shengli's unwillingness to fall behind, the director reported his situation to his superiors. Upon learning of this, an old commander of Wang Shengli specially visited him in the field hospital. "You, this little tiger, can shoot with both hands and hit the target precisely. Even if you lose one arm, you still have the other one to shoot with, which won't affect your continued revolution." The commander called Wang Shengli by his nickname and approved his application to continue serving in the army after the amputation. Wang Shengli's former commander was Hong Hu, a commander of a particular corps in the Central Plains Field Army. During the Liberation Army's advance into the Central Plains, Wang Shengli served as a bodyguard for Commander Hong. During a breakout, Commander Hong was seriously injured, and Wang Shengli rode a horse to carry the commander out of the enemy's encirclement amidst a hail of bullets. During that incident, Commander Hong called him Little Tiger. Before becoming a security guard for Commander Hong, Wang Shengli had just joined the army. At that time, he was not called Wang Shengli, but Wang Shenger. Wang Shenger hailed from Huaiwanku, Hunan Province. His parents had 7 children, but none survived due to illness or starvation. They gave birth to him in their 40s and named him Shenger, praying to the heavens for this only child to live and not to die young. When Wang Shenger was 12 years old, Chiang Kai-shek breached the Huaiwanku embankment of the Yellow River to prevent the Japanese invasion. Before the flood arrived, Wang Shenger's parents hurriedly pushed him onto a crooked-necked willow tree, and the floodwaters instantly engulfed them. After the death of both parents, Wang Shenger followed the crowd of refugees on the road. At first, he begged for a living, worked as a temporary worker at Zhengzhou railway station, and later drifted to Chuzhou City, the capital of Dongjiang Province, where he carried large bags at the riverside dock. Soon the war of resistance was won. Wang Shenger returned home with some money earned from hard labor, but on the way a group of bandits called Zhensong Army robbed him. Bandits, the Zhensong Army, looted his money, kidnapped him, and forced him to become one of them. Within half a year, the civil war between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party broke out. Zhensong Army took advantage of the chaos to loot and burn, harassing the countryside. Once, they even robbed a grain transport team of the People's Liberation Army, killing and injuring several people. The People's Liberation Army, enraged, sent a regiment to surround the Zhensong Army camp, demanding their surrender within a limited time. The leader of the Zhensong Army initially wanted to put up a fight, but his subordinates were already terrified by the might of the People's Liberation Army. They secretly colluded, got the leader drunk, tied him up, and surrendered to the People's Liberation Army. Wang Shenger thus became a soldier in the Central Plains Field Army. He was skilled with a gun and fought bravely. Despite being a bandit for a few days, he was from a poor background. Before long, Commander Hong selected him to be his bodyguard. When Wang Shenger first met Commander Hong, he was a bit nervous, not knowing where to look, acting awkwardly like a shy girl. Commander Hong had participated in the Long March and served as a brigade commander in the 115th Division during the anti-Japanese War. He was a formidable general in the 8th Route Army. Although he was as terrifying to the enemy as Zhang Fei during battles, he was usually affable and pleasant to others, unlike some commanders prone to losing their temper. At that time, seeing Wang Shenger's nervous expression, Commander Hong rolled up a cigarette and chatted with him about everyday matters while smoking. He asked where he was from, how old he was, etc. When he heard that his name was Wang Shenger, he burst out laughing and said, "This name isn't good. I'll change it for you." Commander Hong pondered momentarily and said, "Let's call you Shengli." "Yes, Wang Shengli. You have good marksmanship and were brave in battle. You should be good at winning and dare to win." Upon hearing this, Wang Shenger grinned happily and said, "Commander, this name sounds nice. I'll be called Wang Shengli from now on." Shortly after the liberation of Chuzhou City, someone temporarily established the field hospital in an abandoned factory on the north bank of the Dongjiang River, where conditions were relatively poor. The wards were close to the riverbank. At night, when it was quiet, Wang Shengli, lying in bed, could hear the sound of waves crashing against the shore, feeling as if his head was resting on the waves and his whole body was undulating like them. Ship horns echoed in the river from time to time, making his eardrums tingle. The sounds and sensations further disrupted Wang Shengli's sleep. Because of the delayed surgery, Wang Shengli's recovery was relatively slow. From the radio, he heard that the People's Liberation Army was advancing with overwhelming force, defeating the Kuomintang troops easily, and cities were being captured one after another. The news that the liberation of the whole of China was imminent kept coming. Trapped in the hospital, Wang Shengli thought of his comrades bravely charging forward and killing enemies, frowning and sighing all day long at his helplessness. One day, Liu Jiming came to visit him in the hospital. Although they had only met briefly, the two men always doubly cherished and never forgot the revolutionary friendship forged during their battles. Wang Shengli's happiness returned, dispelling his depression. "It was not easy for me to find out that you were hospitalized here," Liu Jiming said as soon as he saw Wang Shengli holding his hand tightly. Liu Jiming brought Wang Shengli the Dajiang Daily that published his newsletter, and although Wang Shengli had already read the article, it was a special gift for him. Wang Shengli treated Liu Jiming with American beef cans and biscuits, which were trophies sent to him by his comrades from the Southern Front. In a brief note, his comrades wrote, "Company Commander, when you eat the trophies we captured on the battlefield, it's like fighting alongside us." Wang Shengli felt both relieved and ashamed after reading it. Liu Jiming wore a youthful outfit and had his hair parted in the middle, looking more like an intellectual than when they first met. He told Wang Shengli, "Captain Wang, they transferred me to the Dajiang Daily newspaper as a reporter. Placing the red flag into the heart of the enemy is a newsletter I wrote before transferring to the newspaper. How is it? Is it written well?" Wang Shengli said, Okay, but I can't recognize more than half of the words. I asked the nurse to read it several times." Liu Jiming said, "What's my article worth? You led the team to capture the enemy's city defense headquarters and raised the first 5-starred red flag above the river. You were a great hero in the eyes of the people." Wang Shengli shook his head and said, "What kind of hero am I? Those comrades who send me trophies were the real heroes. Compared to them, I'm a bear." Seeing that Wang Shengli was somewhat down, Liu Jiming realized that he only had one arm left and didn't know what to say. "This is only a few months of work. The Kuomintang army is about to be wiped out by us. This gang of tortoise grandsons damn do not stand up to the fight, wait for me to get well and rush to the front line after the injury. I'm afraid that the opportunity to clean up the field of battle is also not there." Upon hearing Wang Shengli's words, Liu Jiming finally understood that he was not upset about losing an arm, but regretted losing the opportunity to fight. He couldn't help but laugh in silence. Wang Shengli rolled his eyes and said, "Why were you laughing? Were you laughing at me or those bastards from the Kuomintang?" "I'm laughing at you, Captain Wang." "Are you laughing at me being a bear?" Wang Shengli's face darkened and he seemed a bit angry. His face was already dark and looked even darker when he got angry. "Laughing? You're afraid there won't be any battles to fight." Liu Jiming stopped laughing and said seriously. Glancing around, he saw no one nearby and lowered his voice. "The large-scale wars within our country have indeed ended, but international wars could erupt at any time." "International and foreign wars?" Wang Shengli was taken aback upon hearing this. You noticed that the newspapers and broadcasts have been reporting on the situation in the Korean War all day recently?" Liu Jiming said with a hint of mystery. "The American devils have even been shelling the banks of the Yalu River. Once they cross the 38th parallel, the party's Central Committee and Chairman Mao will not stand idly by. You guys who play with words were brilliant. Everything becomes clear after you analyze it." Wang Shengli slapped his forehead and chuckled twice. Based on this, it seems like there's going to be a big battle, right? I'm just making a wild guess. Don't spread it, Luo Zheng cautioned. It's not to be disclosed. Absolutely not. This is a secret. How could I not understand? Wang Shengli nodded repeatedly with a smile, as if he had received another military medal. From that day on, Wang Shengli started paying attention to daily broadcasts and newspapers. He was once illiterate, but after joining the army, he attended literacy classes. He didn't know many characters, so he asked the nurses in the hospital to read aloud for him. Whenever they came across reports about the situation in the Korean War, he would ask the nurses to read them aloud several times. This helped him learn many more characters. On July 27, 1950, the Chinese People's Volunteers officially went to Kaohsiung to participate in the war. Wang Shengli was the first to submit a request for combat to his superiors. At that time, he had already recovered from his injuries and returned to the team, but he returned not to the field army, but to the local troops stationed in Chuzhou City. Therefore, despite submitting countless requests for combat to his superiors, he did not receive the opportunity to go to Kaohsiung to participate in the war until 1953. Shortly after the end of the Korean War, Wang Shengli transferred to civilian work with a heart full of regrets. For Wang Shengli, who had lost both parents and had no relatives, the concept of hometown had long become blurred. Instead of returning to his hometown in Hunan, he transferred to Chuzhou. Initially, authorities assigned Wang Shengli to work at the Chuzhou Agricultural Bureau, but within 2 years, he found the office work too leisurely, and his arms and legs had rusted from sitting in the office all day. He submitted a report to his superiors requesting to work at the grassroots level. The leaders, considering he was once a combat hero with only one arm, were worried that he might not adapt to the harsh environment at the grassroots level, so they never agreed. However, in the face of his mushroom tactics, they eventually compromised. In 1958, authorities sent Wang Shengli to the Pegu People's Commune, where he served as deputy head and concurrently headed the People's Armed Forces Department. 2. Commune Love. Wang Shengli was almost 40 years old when he got married. Wang Shengli's wife, Pei Fenglan, was a cook at the commune cafeteria. In their second year of marriage, Pei Fenglan gave birth to a son of Wang Shengli. When Pei Fenglan was giving birth, Wang Shengli was leading the militia training of the commune. Upon hearing that his wife had given birth to a big, fat boy for him, he rushed back to Pai Town overnight, hugging his son who had not even opened his eyes and smiling from ear to ear. Pei Fenglan reminded him, "Don't just be happy. We haven't named our son yet." Wang Shengli thought for a long time, but his brain was about to explode and he couldn't think of a name for his son. He remembered a movie he watched at the militia training site 2 days ago, Heroic Sons and Daughters. The volunteer soldier Wang Cheng carried a walkie-talkie and chanted, "For the victory, fire at me!" In an instant, he felt his blood boil as if he had become that heroic volunteer soldier. He couldn't help but wave his only remaining arm and shout, "For the victory, fire at me!" Immediately afterward, the militia followed him and shouted, "For the victory, fire at me!" "Let's call him Wang Cheng," Wang Shengli said to his wife. Pei Fenglan had also seen this movie, but thought she must have misheard. "Wang Cheng?" "Yes," Wang Shengli said, enunciating each word carefully. "Our son shall be named Wang Cheng." Although Pei Fenglan was a cook in the commune cafeteria, she had more knowledge and experience than ordinary women. She also liked the name, so she named her son that. Pei Fenglan was almost 30 years old when she married Wang Shengli. She had delicate skin and tender flesh, wore 2 big braids, and had 2 beautiful dimples when she smiled. Despite her cultured background, why did she wait so long to marry? Pei Fenglan's father was the younger brother-in-law of Huang Yaozu, a big suppressed landlord. He served as a butler for the Huang family for many years and acquired dozens of acres of land in the countryside of Pai Town. During the land reform, he was classified as a rich peasant. She had a cousin named Pei Yongyu, who used to be a cadre in Chuzhou City but was later labeled as a rightist. Pei Fenglan spent her first 25 years farming in the countryside. However, she had attended a private school before liberation and had a broader mindset than typical rural girls. Because of her family's high social status, she never found a suitable marriage match. In 1958, Comrade Wang Shengli, the deputy director of the Pigu Commune and the head of the People's Armed Forces Department, went to their village for a while. The village set up a large cafeteria. Because of Pei Fenglan's mother's excellent cooking skills, Deputy Director Wang appointed her as a cook. At that time, the entire village ate in the large cafeteria. When Fenglan's mother was too busy, she often asked Fenglan to help in the cafeteria. Gradually, Fenglan also developed excellent cooking skills. Later, the village closed the cafeteria. Because of the increasing number of people dining at the commune cafeteria and the shortage of manpower, Deputy Director Wang transferred Fenglan to work as a cook at the commune cafeteria. Fenglan grew up in the countryside and could handle delicate and rough work. Fenglan was the only woman in the commune cafeteria, and she could do many tasks that other women and men couldn't. In addition, Fenglan inherited her mother's cooking skills and was good at cooking. Whenever leaders came to inspect the work, Deputy Director Wang always designated Fenglan to cook. Wang Shengli was already in his 30s but had not married. In the commune compound, no one else of his age was unmarried. During holidays, all the other commune leaders went home to enjoy their wives' special cooking, while Wang Shengli still ate in the cafeteria with other single workers. Wang Shengli was from Hunan and loved to eat noodles. Even the fragrant rice tasted bland to him. However, the cafeteria only served mantou, steamed buns, steamed rolls and noodles for breakfast, and only rice for lunch and dinner. Because of this, Wang Shengli developed gastritis and suffered from stomach aches from time to time. If he ate cold food, the pain would be even worse. Over time, he lost a lot of weight. During Wang Shengli's time there, Pei Fenglan observed his eating habits. After working in the commune cafeteria, she would prepare an extra bowl of noodles for him at lunch and dinner, or heat the mantou and steamed rolls not sold in the morning. This way, Wang Shengli could have noodles for all 3 meals a day. Wang Shengli was very busy with work and always arrived later than others at the cafeteria. Fenglan would prepare his meals in advance and put them in the steamer, so no matter how late Wang Shengli arrived at the cafeteria, his meals were always hot. Although Wang Shengli only had one arm, he worked with a desperation akin to fighting in the army. Commune cadres were required to spend 1/3 of their time each year in the countryside, eating and working alongside the members. Unlike other cadres who had families to attend to, Wang Shengli was unburdened and often ran to the countryside, staying for 10 days or 2 weeks at a time. That summer, Wang Shengli took part in the double grab in the village where he was stationed. After harvesting the rice and planting the rice seedlings with the commune members, he worked non-stop for half a month. Finally, he collapsed from exhaustion and returned to the commune. He lay in bed, unable to get up, feeling like his body had fallen apart. Pei Fenglan was a meticulous person. She saw Wang Shengli go to the cafeteria to get a meal the first night, but didn't see him at noon the next day. She asked Xiao Lei, the messenger who usually communicates with several commune leaders, if Yuitsu Director Wang had gone to the countryside again. Xiao Lei said no. Yuitsu Director Wang had just returned from the countryside after finishing the double grab, and he wouldn't go to the countryside for a while. Fenglan was doubtful. In the evening, after Fenglan finished the cafeteria business, she took some steamed buns to deliver to Wang Shengli. Fenglan knew that single commune cadres or those whose families were not in the local area all lived in a red brick and tile house behind the cafeteria, but she didn't know which room Yuitsu Director Wang lived in. When she finally found out which room Wang Shengli lived in, she knocked on the door, but no one answered. She gently pushed the door, and it automatically opened. Ian Su-de, she saw Wang Shengli lying on the bed with his eyes closed tightly and his dark face pale and bloodless. Startled, Pei Fenglan touched Wang Shengli's forehead. It was burning hot. "Iwitsu Director Wang, how did you get so sick?" Fenglan exclaimed and hurriedly went to the commune duty office to inform Xiao Lei. The two of them together took Wang Shengli to the commune health center. Wang Shengli suffered from acute pneumonia caused by a high fever, and it took 3 days of intravenous drip therapy at the health center to bring his fever down. The doctor said that if Deputy Director Wang had been sent to the hospital a day later, he would have been in danger. For this reason, the commune leaders commended Pei Fenglan. During Wang Shengli's hospitalization, Pei Fenglan brought him meals, all of which were his favorite noodle dishes. After he was discharged, Fenglan continued to bring him meals and helped him wash the dirty clothes piled up in his dormitory that had gone sour. She also took the opportunity to clean up the messy room thoroughly. Looking at everything Pei Fenglan had done for him, Wang Shengli felt very guilty. One day, when he saw Fenglan bringing him food again, he said, "Fenglan, the cafeteria is busy. You can leave the meal-serving job to Xiao Lei." Pei Fenglan didn't say anything. The next day, the person who brought the meal was indeed changed to Xiao Lei. In the evening, Wang Shengli was lying in bed and hadn't fallen asleep yet when he heard someone knocking on the door. When he opened it, he saw Fenglan standing at the door, holding a large bowl of steaming noodles in soup, and there were 2 fried eggs in the bowl. Wang Shengli refused to eat, chanting, "Fenglan, what were you doing? Am I almost recovered from my illness?" Pei Fenglan said, "Deputy Director Wang, illness comes like a mountain collapsing, but goes like a thread being unwound. You need to take good care of your health." Wang Shengli added, "Fenglan, you can't let me make mistakes." Pei Fenglan understood his meaning and quickly said, "Deputy Director Wang, don't worry. I bought this bowl of noodles and eggs and made them for you with my money. I didn't take advantage of the public funds." A sense of warmth that Wang Shengli had never experienced before surged up in his heart, and he fell silent. Pei Fenglan raised her head and glanced at Wang Shengli, a blush rising on her fair face. 1 year later, both Wang Shengli and Pei Fenglan received a marriage certificate stamped with a large red steel seal from the civil affairs assistant of the commune. Their wedding was simple and lively, and several commune leaders attended. It is said that for the marriage of Wang Shengli and Pei Fenglan, the commune party committee held a special meeting. Given Wang Shengli's status as a revolutionary cadre and Pei Fenglan's family background, they urged him to contemplate. However, Wang Shengli stood tall, just like he had sworn to his superiors in the army, waved his only arm and said, "Damn it, even if Pei Fenglan is a counter-revolutionary fortress, I will take her down, which will only benefit the revolution. There's no need to consider it. I am determined to marry Pei Fenglan." Wang Shengli's fierce determination amused everyone, and they burst into laughter. 3. Successor. Since having a son, Wang Shengli had changed entirely. Before, he was all about work, spending all day and night immersed in it. He couldn't relax, and when he did, he felt bored. He was alone. If he ate well, the whole family wouldn't go hungry, so why not work? But now things were different. He had a wife and son. Like most people, he had a real home. For Wang Shengli, who was lonely and single for many years, this was indeed a brand new life. Every day after work, Wang Shengli could wait to rush home. The first action after entering the house was to pick up his son Wang Cheng and give him a big hug and kiss, regardless of whether his son was sleeping in the cradle or nursing in his mother's arms. The son cried out in pain from his whiskers. Pei Fenglan took her son back from Wang Shengli's arms and forced him to shave his beard, threatening that he would never be able to kiss his son again. Wang Shengli had no choice but to go to the barber's obediently. For Wang Shengli, not allowing him to eat was one thing, but not allowing him to kiss his son was even more unbearable than taking away his life. From then on, Pei Fenglan stopped working at the commune cafeteria to take care of her son. This was a decision made by Wang Shengli. At first, Fenglan was unwilling, saying she couldn't give up revolutionary work and opportunities for progress just because of her son. But Wang Shengli said with a serious expression, "What is revolutionary work, and what is progress? For you at present, raising Wang Cheng is the most important revolutionary work and the greatest progress." He unquestionably waved his hand, showing a strong paternalistic style. What is more important than cultivating successors for the proletarian revolutionary cause? When Pei Fenglan saw Wang Shengli elevating the raising of their son to a political level, she had nothing to say and could only focus on taking care of her son and husband at home. What Wang Shengli said to his wife was not mere cliché or empty talk. Raised as an orphan, he would likely still be a bandit in the mountains if he hadn't joined the People's Liberation Army and the Communist Party. For Wang Shengli, the party's cause was his own, and his son was also the party's son, destined to inherit the revolutionary cause in the future. Therefore, when Wang Shengli said that raising his son well was to cultivate successors for the proletarian revolutionary cause, it's absolutely true. It's a sincere sentiment flowing from his heart. When Wang Cheng was born, both his eyes had single eyelids. 3 months later, Pei Fenglan noticed that her son's left eye had developed double eyelids. She joyfully told Wang Shengli, but he seemed a bit disappointed. It turned out that Fenglan had beautiful double eyelids, while Wang Shengli's eyes were both single eyelids. "Who exactly did this baby take after?" Wang Shengli muttered. Pei Fenglan rolled her eyes at her husband and scolded, "Can't you see? Our son has double eyelids on his left eye and single eyelids on his right eye. Isn't that just like you and me?" Wang Shengli carefully examined his son again and noticed that not only did the son have his and Pei Fenglan's eyelids, but his skin was neither too dark nor too light, neither as white as his wife's nor as dark as his own. He felt that his wife had a point and smiled with satisfaction. When Wang Cheng turned 1, Wang Shengli gave him a gift, a toy gun that he had personally made. When he was in the army, every time after a battle, when they cleared the battlefield, Wang Shengli would pick up the cartridge cases scattered on the battlefield and put them in his pocket. Those cartridge cases included various types of bullets from pistols, rifles, and machine guns, dazzling to the eye. When he transferred from the army to civilian work, he didn't bring any other messy things, just those cartridge cases, which filled up an entire dry food bag. After working in the civilian sector, every once in a while, Wang Shengli would take out the dry food bag, rummage through the large and small various types of cartridge cases, and wipe them with a cloth. Seeing those dark yellow cartridge cases become shiny again, scenes of smoke-filled battles and hail of bullets emerged in Wang Shengli's mind, as if he had returned to the days of intense fighting. Wang Shengli never hesitated when it came to work, and he was equally decisive when it came to training successors. Pei Fenglan handled all the household chores, while Wang Shengli's only responsibility at home was to take care of the child. As soon as his son learned to walk, Wang Shengli would play war games with him. Every time, he would pretend to be a Kuomintang soldier or a Japanese devil, while his son would play the role of a new Fourth Army, 8th Route Army, or People's Liberation Army soldier. He would pretend to flee in front while his son chased after him. Wearing a small military cap with a 5-pointed star on his head and holding the pistol made from a bullet casing in his hand, he shouted loudly, "Charge! Kill!" and ran back and forth in the commune courtyard. Later, Wang Shengli lay down on the ground, and his son chased after him, stepping on one of his feet and pointing the pistol at his head. With a babyish scream, he said, "Raise your hands and surrender your weapons, or you will be killed." Wang Shengli obediently raised one hand above his head. That moment was the happiest moment for Wang Shengli. Every night before going to bed, Wang Shengli would tell his son a revolutionary story. Besides well-known heroic deeds such as Dong Tunrui blowing up the blockhouse and Huang Jiguang blocking the gun hole, there were also stories of his battles. The stories he told most often were about how he rode a warhorse carrying a severely injured commander out of the enemy's encirclement, and how he led the sharp-edged company to sneak into the city during the battle to liberate the Da-Jiang River, raid the Kuomintang Army's city defense headquarters, and capture the lieutenant general commander alive. After transferring to civilian work, local primary and secondary schools invited Wang Shengli to give students revolutionary traditional education. He always told these two stories. He could recite them by heart over time. For the story about raiding the city defense headquarters, Wang Shengli basically copied Luo Zheng's communication planting the red flag in the heart of the enemy. Of course, he didn't forget to tell his son Waheng Cheng about the story of the movie Heroic Sons and Daughters. Your father was originally on the Yalu River. If the American Devils had surrendered 2 days later, your father might have become a great hero, Waheng Shengli said with a regretful tone. However, in this way, I wouldn't have met your mother, Comrade Pei Fenglan, and there wouldn't be you. At this point, he looked sternly at his son and asked, Now do you understand why your father named you Wang Cheng? Waheng Cheng blinked his single eyelids, then blinked his double eyelids, nodded, and shook his head. Waheng Shengli was completely confused and wondered if his son had understood him. When Waheng Shengli spoke these words to Waheng Cheng, the Cultural Revolution had already been in full swing. Soon after, he stepped down from his position as deputy director of the Pegu Commune Revolutionary Committee and concurrently as the Minister of the People's Armed Forces, and was appointed as the director of the Pai Town Brick and Tile Factory. To say stepped down is actually not accurate. It should be called was dismissed or was demoted. Not long after the start of the Cultural Revolution, Waheng Shengli was knocked down. There were 2 charges against Waheng Shengli. The first was that he had been a bandit before joining the revolution, which led to him being labeled as a class alien who infiltrated the revolutionary ranks. The second was that he had taken advantage of his position to favor Pei Fenglan, the niece of a prominent landlord, Huang Yaozu, and the daughter of a wealthy peasant, and even married her, which led to him being labeled as a degenerate. During the criticism sessions, he shouted along with the crowd, "Down with degenerate and class alien Waheng Shengli," with a calm and composed expression, as if it were someone else who was being downed instead of himself. After returning home and waiting for his son to fall asleep at night, Waheng Shengli asked Pei Fenglan to fry him some eggs and drank alone in silence. As he drank, he began to curse. "Damn it! They say I married you because I've degenerated. Bullshit! My heart has been red since the day I joined the revolution, and it won't change until I die." As he spoke, he opened his bloodshot eyes and asked Fenglan, "Do you believe me? If you don't, take a knife and cut open your body for them to see." With these words, he was about to go to the kitchen to get a knife, but Fenglan quickly hugged him from behind and repeatedly said, I believe, but what's the use of just me believing?" After saying this, tears streamed down her face. Perhaps it was due to Wang Shengli's good attitude in confessing his crimes, or perhaps because he was, after all, an old revolutionary who had sacrificed an arm for the establishment of New China, that the Commune Revolutionary Committee did not dismiss him from his position outright. Instead, they treated it as an internal contradiction among the people and demoted him. Considering that Waheng Shengli only had one arm, the committee wanted to arrange for him to take up a non-essential position in some department of the commune. However, Waheng Shengli took the initiative to offer to work at the Pai Town Brick and Tile Factory, Brick Factory. At that time, the factory building had just been completed, and the leadership team had not yet been fully established. The director of the commune's revolutionary committee was a young rebel who was worried about being unable to find a suitable factory director. Seeing Wang Shengli volunteering, he was somewhat hesitant. The brick and tile factory was a new achievement of the Cultural Revolution, and it seemed inappropriate to entrust it to a class dissident like Wang Shengli. However, Wang Shengli went to the office of the director of the Commune Revolutionary Committee and patted his chest, saying, "Since I joined the revolution, my life has been given to the party. I have no complaints, whether it's scolding, beating, dismissal, or demotion. As long as I can do revolutionary work, if they don't let me do it, they might as well shoot me." He became increasingly excited as he spoke. "If you don't trust me, I can sign a military order. If I am appointed the factory director of the brick and tile factory, I promise that within 5 years, all the poor and lower middle-class farmers in more than 10 brigades of the commune will live in brick and tile houses." The young director of the Commune Revolutionary Committee was somewhat moved as he looked at Wang Shengli's empty sleeve. He shook his only arm and said, "To consolidate the achievements of the Cultural Revolution, we must promote production through revolution. Our task is so arduous. Whether the majority of poor and lower middle-class farmers can live in brick and tile houses in a relatively short time depends on you, Comrade Wang Shengli. You should go to the brick and tile factory. I hope you can make new contributions to the revolution." The day after the transfer order was issued, it was drizzling, but Wang Shengli didn't wait for the weather to clear up. He took his wife Pei Fenglan and son Wang Sheng to report to the brick and tile factory. On the day they left the commune compound, almost everyone in the yard turned out to bid farewell to their family. People stood in the drizzle, watching Wang Shengli and his family of 3 walk out of the dormitory. Pei Fenglan walked ahead with her bulging luggage, while Wang Shengli walked behind with his son Wang Sheng in his right hand. Wang Shengli was dressed neatly as if he was going to attend an important meeting or visit someone, wearing the old military uniform he brought back from the army when he transferred to civilian work. It was not wrinkled at all, with the buttons fastened tightly, and his beard was clean-shaven, with a green glow on his cheeks. He walked with a soldier's gait, and his empty sleeve was wet with rain, like a faded flag stained by warfire. His high-spirited and confident demeanor did not resemble someone who had been demoted at all, for mother died. During Wang Cheng's teenage years, 2 significant events occurred. The first was the passing of his mother. When Wang Cheng's mother passed away, he was just 10 years old. At that time, he and his parents, a family of 3, lived in the dormitory of a brick and tile factory. His father, Wang Shengli, worked as the factory director at the brick and tile factory, while Wang Cheng studied at the factory's school for children. His mother, Pei Fenglan, no longer had to take care of him all day as she used to, so she returned to her old job as a cook at the factory cafeteria. Every day after finishing her work at the cafeteria, Pei Fenglan would take time to cook for Wang Shengli and Wang Cheng. She would bring home meals from the cafeteria if she couldn't find time to cook. Wang Cheng had always loved eating the dishes made by his mother. Although the dishes at home and the cafeteria were all made by his mother, he always felt that the dishes cooked at home tasted better than those at the cafeteria. He couldn't understand why, so he once asked his mother. She smiled and poked his forehead, saying, "Silly son, the big pot of dishes Mum cooks at the cafeteria has less oil. At home, we use a small pot and stir-fry with plenty of oil to taste better." Wang Cheng didn't know when his mother fell ill. At first, he only felt that his mother was getting thinner and thinner, like a thin piece of paper that a gust of wind could blow away. He often heard his mother coughing, and sometimes he would be awakened in the middle of the night by his mother's coughing. When his mother coughed, her face turned pale, her entire body curled up, her mouth opened wide, and she shivered violently as if her internal organs were about to come out. Once, Wang Cheng saw his mother coughing up blood. The basin placed beside the bed was filled with blood. It was the first time he had seen so much blood, and he felt an inexplicable fear. He saw this fear reflected in his father's eyes as well. At that moment, his father was patting his mother's back. Although he only had one hand, it appeared dexterous and powerful, with exceptionally gentle and considerate movements. In Wang Cheng's impression, his father had always been a stern and rugged man, busy with work outside all day long, and rarely showing such consideration towards his mother at home. After that day, my mother stopped working at the cafeteria and moved into the commune hospital. After a while, my father sent her to a major hospital in Chuzhou. Wang Shengli heard from someone that his mother had a large tumor in her stomach and needed surgery at the hospital in Chuzhou. Later, his father and mother returned, but his mother was lying in a square box. That was his mother's urn. After his mother's death, Wang Sheng's life underwent significant changes. He noticed that his father had lost weight, and his square face had become elongated, wider at the top and narrower at the bottom, resembling the so-called horse face. His previously smooth-shaven chin and cheeks were now covered in a stubbly beard, as thick and lush as the artemisia on the riverbank. But for Wang Shengli, the most significant change was that he had to go to the factory cafeteria for 3 meals a day, and he can no longer enjoy the stir-fried dishes made by his mother. After his mother passed away, she was buried on the riverbank not far from the brick and tile factory. The riverbank served as the soil extraction base for the factory, from which all the soil used for demolding was taken. A road paved with broken bricks and slag connected the factory to the riverbank, and every day a stream of chicken carts transporting soil flowed back and forth between the factory and the riverbank. The spectacular scene resembled the frontline laborers transporting ammunition for the People's Liberation Army in the movie Rolling Wheels. The factory would screen outdoor movies every Sunday, showing 2 feature films each time. The first feature film was usually a model opera, while the second was a war story. Before the movie screening, the factory director Wang Shengli would occasionally give a speech to the employees of the brick and tile factory, all about the work in the factory. Wang Shengli sat beside the projector and felt proud when he heard his father's strong Hunan accent being broadcast through the loudspeaker to the entire open-air screening venue. Wang Sheng's favorite genre was war feature films, such as The Youth in the Flames, The Guerrillas on the Plains, Tunnel War, Mine War, The Scout Crossing the River, Surprise Attack, Rolling Wheels, Unforgettable Battle, The Shining Red Star, Heroic Sons and Daughters. Wang Shengli had heard his father talk about the stories in these films. However, he still watches them with great interest. After watching too many wars feature films, Wang Shengli couldn't help but want to go to war like the stories in the movies. He often led his friends to play war games on the river beach, with a pistol made by his father using bullet casings tucked into his waist. The pockmarked river beach was perfect for war games. Wang Shengli had a pistol, while his friends only had red-banded spears. He naturally became the king of children. Didn't the leaders in the movies all wield pistols? Every time they played war games, Wang Shengli always played the role of the People's Liberation Army or the 8th Route Army, while Ba Dong played the role of the Kuomintang Army or the Japanese Devils and the U.S. Army. Ba Dong and Wang Shengli were classmates at the brick and tile factory school in Paitown Town, and his father was the deputy director of the brick and tile factory. Ba Dong was very dissatisfied with Wang Shengli playing the positive role and suggested that they take turns playing, but Wang Shengli refused outright. Ba Dong refused, but Wang Shengli stood with his arms akimbo and said, "My father is the factory director, and your father is the deputy director. You should obey my arrangement." Ba Dong also retorted, "My dad listens to your dad, but I'm not my dad, so why should I listen to you?" Wang Shengli rolled his eyes and said, "You can refuse to obey, but you won't be able to copy my homework anymore." Upon hearing this, Ba Dong immediately lost his composure. This was Wang Sheng's trump card against Ba Dong, and it had always worked. Wang Shengli had good academic performance, often ranking in the top 3 in class. His essays had even been published as model essays by the teacher on the school's bulletin board. On the other hand, Ba Dong had poor academic performance, always ranking in the bottom few. He often copied Wang Sheng's homework. However, since his mother's death, Wang Shengli had stopped playing war games. On the day of his mother's burial, as Wang Shengli and his father left the riverbank, they suddenly felt that the battlefield that had brought countless fun to him and his friends seemed so empty, desolate, and bleak. The house felt empty upon returning home, and they always felt something was missing. That day, his father took him aside for a serious talk in front of his mother's portrait. Dad first recited a passage from Chairman Mao's quotations. "Death is a common occurrence, but struggle entails sacrifice. Our comrades must see the future and the light in difficult times and bolster our courage." Dad can recite quite a few quotations from Chairman Mao, and he enjoyed quoting them, whether it was during a big meeting at the factory or at home. In the center of the living room at home, neatly arranged, was the selected works of Mao Zedong, a book that my father often read. Next to it was a Xinhua dictionary. Whenever he encountered an unfamiliar word, my father turned to that dictionary, which was almost worn out from frequent use. "Son, your mom is no longer with us. From now on, we'll eat together in the cafeteria. Your dad is busy with revolutionary work and doesn't have the time and energy to cook for you. In the future, you not only need to learn to take care of yourself, but also learn from Pan Dongzu, Gazi, and Haiwa to help your dad complete the task. I have submitted a military order to my superiors, promising to make all the poor and lower-middle-class farmers in the commune live in brick and tile houses instead of thatched cottages within 5 years. Now 3 years have passed, and nearly half of the task remains unfinished." When Dad said this, his thin face turned stern. "Since the day I joined the revolution, I have always fulfilled the tasks assigned by my superiors to the letter. Son, you can't let your dad lose face." Pan Dongzu, Gazi, and Haiwa were the young heroes featured in the war feature films The Shining Red Star, Little Soldier Jenga, and The Chicken Feather Letter. Once, when the brick and tile factory was showing heroic sons and daughters, he saw the scene where the volunteer soldier Wang Shengli shouted into the walkie-talkie, "Firu at me for the victory!" Tears welled up in his eyes, and he exclaimed, "Dad, my name is also Wang Shengli. I want to be a hero." Upon hearing this, his father stretched out his rough, large hand and caressed Wang Sheng's cheek. A long-lost smile appeared on his face as he said, "That's right. You are indeed the worthy successor to your father." At that moment, Wang Shengli was filled with pride. 5. Heroes and Bears. Chairman Mao passed away in the 2nd year after my mother's death. This was the 2nd major event in Wang Sheng's youth. Chairman Mao was the person his father admired most. Not only did he have a portrait of the chairman prominently displayed in the center of the living room, but he also kept a bust of Chairman Mao that he bought during a visit to Shoshan on the chest of drawers in his bedroom. Next to the bust was a set of selected works of Mao Zedong. His father's education was not high, and he hadn't read many books. The book he read most often was selected works of Mao. He always quotes Chairman Mao's sayings. Whenever he encountered difficulties or worries at work, he either talked to his mom about them or read selected works of Mao. As he read, his furrowed brows unfurled. Dad rarely sang, and the only complete song Wang Shengli had heard him sing was, "I love reading Chairman Mao's books the most." I love reading Chairman Mao's books the most. I've put in a lot of effort to read them 1,001 times. I carefully comprehended the profound truths and felt a warmth in my heart. Hey, it seems like a timely rain has fallen on the dry land. The young seedlings are covered with dewdrops, and Chairman Mao's rain and dew nourish me. I am full of enthusiasm for the revolution. The works of Chairman Mao are like the sun. Every word and sentence shines with golden light. The soldiers who followed the example were enlightened. They have a clear direction for work and study. His father was tone-deaf and had a terrible singing voice, but he sang very seriously, clapping his hands while singing, which looked a bit comical. Wang Shengli first heard the news of Chairman Mao's death through the loudspeakers at the brick and tile factory. At that time, he and Ba Dong were rolling iron rings on the open-air movie screen. It was a Saturday, and the 2 movies to be shown that night were the Albanian film Coastal Thunderstorm and the North Korean film Invisible Frontier. One was a war film, and the other was an anti-espionage film, both of which were his and Ba Dong's favorites. At that moment, the loudspeaker at the brick and tile factory sounded. Wang Shengli felt a bit strange, as the loudspeaker usually broadcasted the news from the Central People's Broadcasting Station and the provincial station once each in the morning, afternoon, and evening, or else it would be Comrade Wang Shengli, the factory director, announcing some critical notice. He stopped the iron ring and looked at the sun in the western sky. It was still quite early before it got dark. "It must be your dad broadcasting the announcement again," Badung sniffed, rolling the iron ring out again. Wang Shengli held onto the iron ring and didn't move. He wanted to wait until his dad finished broadcasting the announcement before playing. But unexpectedly, after playing a piece of low-pitched and depressing music, a low voice came out of the loudspeaker. "The Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, the Central Military Commission of the Communist Party of China, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, and the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference deeply announce with sorrow that Chairman Mao Zedong, the chairman of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, the chairman of the Central Military Commission of the Communist Party of China, the honorary chairman of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, the great leader of the Chinese people of all ethnic groups, and the great mentor of the proletariat and oppressed nations worldwide, passed away at 0:10 on September 9, 1976, at the age of 83, due to illness that proved untreatable. Wang Shengli was stunned, not yet reacting, when Ba Dung ran over from the other end of the open-air cinema, his steps faltering and appearing somewhat flustered. As he ran, he shouted, "Wang Shengli, did you hear the broadcast? Chairman Mao is dead." As if struck by something, the iron ring in Wang Sheng's hand clattered to the ground. He felt as if the sky had suddenly turned dark. Wang Shengli walked home with heavy steps. On his way from the workshop to the factory dormitory, he saw many people listening to the radio while crying loudly. A middle-aged woman dressed in work clothes and covered in dust dragged her voice and wept in sorrow. Chairman Mao, aren't you immortal? How could you leave so suddenly?" Cries echoed from every corner of the brick and tile factory, forming a river of sorrow. Wang Shengli returned home and sat in the room for a while. His mind was empty, not thinking about anything. The loudspeaker played funeral music over and over again. His father had not returned yet, and the room was eerily quiet. He raised his head and looked at the portrait of Chairman Mao on the wall. Chairman Mao gazed at him kindly as usual, with a gentle gaze. He then looked at the portrait of his mother on the opposite wall. His mother also stared at him kindly as usual, with a gentle gaze. Wang Shengli felt that Chairman Mao's and his mother's gazes were as warm as sunshine when they shone on him. In his heart, Chairman Mao, like his mom and dad, was his own family. But now, like his mom, this relative was no longer with him. Thinking of this, Wang Shengli was so sad that he couldn't help but bawl, crying as sadly as when his mom died, tears rolling down his face and wetting his clothes. Dad came back very late. The first thing he saw when he entered the room was the tear stains on Wang Sheng's face. And Wang Shengli also noticed a tear stain on his face. Dad had already cried outside, Wang Shengli thought. Without saying a word, Dad sat down next to Wang Shengli. The two sat shoulder to shoulder for a long time, forgetting to go to the cafeteria for dinner. Later, Wang Shengli heard his dad let out a heavy sigh and say in a hoarse voice, "Chairman Mao is gone, but the revolution must continue." After Chairman Mao's death, my father was upset for a while, but then he picked himself up and devoted all his energy to work. He came home very late every day, and sometimes Wang Shengli woke up in the middle of the night to find his bed empty and his father nowhere to be seen. Whenever the bricks and tiles were being fired, my father would lead the cadres in the factory and work overtime with the workers. The temperature inside the kiln was over 50 degrees Celsius, like a steamer. One morning, while Wang Shengli was in class, the principal called him out of the classroom and said with a grave expression, "Wang Shengli, your father has fainted in the cave and is currently being resuscitated in the infirmary. Please hurry and go and check on him." The infirmary of the brick and tile factory was not far from the local school. Wang Shengli trotted into the infirmary and saw his father lying in bed with an oxygen tube in his nose, surrounded by a group of adults. When the adults saw Wang Shengli coming, they automatically made way for him. He walked to his father's bed and saw that his father's eyes were tightly shut and his face was red and purple as if he had been scalded. Someone whispered, "Your father has worked 2 consecutive shifts in the cave, and the temperature inside is so high that even young workers can't stand it. To meet the targets set by the commune, your father doesn't care about his life." A few days later, Dad was discharged from the hospital. Wang Shengli bought some dishes at the cafeteria and also purchased a bottle of wine at the convenience store. Dad hadn't had a decent meal in a long time, and Wang Shengli wanted to treat him to a feast. During that meal, Dad ate with great relish, and due to the wine, his pale face showed a healthy glow. Dad was pleased and laughed heartily. Pointing at Wang Shengli with his chopsticks, he said, my son knows how to show love and care for his father." Wang Shengli didn't laugh and said seriously, "Dad, the last time you came to our school to give a report, didn't you ask the little red guards to emulate heroes and take action? I also want to contribute to our brick and tile factory. If there's any task, just give me the order." "Wow, you're truly your father's son. You're taking the initiative to challenge me." Dad burst out laughing. After some thought, he said, "Things have been quite unsettled in the factory recently. Outside thieves often sneak in to steal things, and some workers even take things from the factory home after work. These parasites. If we don't teach them a lesson, not only will they fail to complete their production tasks, but even the brick and tile factory might be emptied by them." Dad became increasingly angry as he spoke. "Son, I'll give you a task. After summer vacation, you and the little red guards will patrol the factory. If we catch any thieves, I'll reward each of you with an ice lolly." "Yes, I will resolutely complete the task." Wang Shengli stood at attention and replied loudly. But what Wang Shengli never expected was that before the brick and tile factory completed the production task assigned by the commune, his father was dismissed from his position. Ba Guangming, Ba Dong's father, had become the new director of the brick and tile factory in Pai Town. Years later, Wang Shengli graduated from Pai Town Middle School and was admitted to the Chinese department of Chuzhou Teachers College. The night before he went to Chuzhou to attend school, his father took him to the restaurant next to the Pai Town Supply and Marketing Cooperative for a meal. It had been a long time since the two of them had dined out, and his father ordered a full table of dishes and also got himself a large glass of wine. Before he finished the wine, he got drunk and stared intently at Wang Shengli, saying, "Son, you are now a university student. You have more potential than your father. When I went to work as the factory director at the brick and tile factory, I made a military pledge to ensure that all the poor and lower middle-class farmers in the commune lived in brick and tile houses within 5 years. But I failed to complete the task. I lost the battle. Not only did I not complete the task, but I even lost the position. I am sorry to Chairman Mao, to the leaders, and your mother, Comrade Pei Fenglan. I am not a hero. I am a bear." As my father spoke, he unexpectedly lay down on the table and cried bitterly, just like a child. Chapter 3, 1. Threesome. After Wang Shengli, Du Wei, and Gu Zheng finished their meal at the Good Girl restaurant, it was already past 7 in the evening. Gu Zheng had to study at the library, so she left early. Wang Shengli and Du Wei walked out of Shuiwan Road and strolled around the campus. Du Wei clearly had too much to drink and was excited. He even put one arm around Wang Shengli's shoulder. Since Du Wei was taller than Wang Shengli, it looked like he was leaning on Wang Shengli's shoulder. Their intimate behavior attracted the attention of many passers-by. Wang Shengli felt a bit embarrassed, so he pulled away from Du Wei and kept a bit of distance from him. However, Du Wei kept leaning towards him, covering his mouth with his hand and saying, "I can't believe Zhong Tianyi's sister has grown up so much. Back in Chuzhou Middle School, she was just a little girl." He muttered, "Bro, do you think this girl is pretty?" Wang Shengli detected a strong alcohol odor from his breath and frowned, saying, "Old Wei, you've had too much to drink." "This little bit of wine can make me drunk? You are too underestimating me," Du Wei said with his neck tilted up, but Wang Sheng could clearly see that his steps were swaying, like Yanko twisting. Soon they arrived at a fork in the road, with one path leading to Maple Garden and the other leading outside the campus. Du Wei lived in a private house outside the campus, while an adult group of students held the photography class. The two parted ways at the fork in the road, with Wang Sheng returning to Maple Garden and Du Wei heading back to his rented house. Wang Sheng and Du Wei weren't really close friends. They met in Chuzhou through Zhong Tianyi. At that time, shortly after Wang Sheng was admitted to Chuzhou Teachers College, the school's youth committee and the Chuzhou Municipal Youth Lu Agiwei Committee jointly organized a series of activities titled Young Entrepreneurs on Campus. They invited some up-and-coming young entrepreneurs to give lectures at the school, which had a significant impact. Newspapers, radio stations, and television stations of various sizes in Chuzhou reported on these events. At that time, the term entrepreneur had just entered people's field of vision, and everyone felt fresh and curious. The media and relevant government departments spared no effort to publicize these people who had become rich first, just like the promotion of 10,000 yuan households during the implementation of the Household Contract Responsibility System in rural areas a few years ago. They wore dazzling halos such as Pioneers of Reform and Tide Makers on their heads. Some young people couldn't help but be eager to try their luck, envying and even worshiping entrepreneurs like star-chasing fans. Therefore, the series of activities titled Young Entrepreneurs on Campus at the Teachers College aroused the interest of many students, and every lecture was packed with people. But Wang Sheng never attended a single lecture. He was admitted to Chuzhou Teachers College with the highest score in the Chinese department and could have gone to a 4-year college or even Dongjiang University. However, due to his weak English, he had no choice but to enroll in Chuzhou Teachers College. Wang Sheng had always been unwilling to accept this, and in his first year he made a grand vow to definitely apply for graduate studies at Dongjiang University in the future. Therefore, besides immersing himself in his studies and preparing for the CET-4 exam, College English Test Band 4, he rarely participated in other school activities. That morning, he saw a poster on the newspaper board in front of the library, and a striking headline caught his eye: Young Entrepreneurs on Campus, Series Event Number 8. Having gone through hardships, we bravely ventured into the business world. Keynote speaker, Zhong Tianyi, young entrepreneur, pace-setter of the New Long March in Chuzhou City, and Managar of Red Rock Valley United Industrial and Trade Company. The familiar name Zhong Tianyi firmly attracted Wang Sheng's attention like a magnet. Could it be the temporary worker he once knew from the brick and tile factory in Pai Town? But he immediately shook his head. No, it's impossible. Back then, the incident of Zhong Tianyi's attempted murder caused a great uproar in Pai Town. After Zhong Tianyi fled to escape the crime, there had been no news of him, and his fate remains unknown. Some said he was caught and sentenced, while others said he escaped into Pigu Mountain and fell off a cliff and died. Wang Sheng had heard his father mention Zhong Tianyi more than once. Alas, how similar the fates of these two father and son are. At that time, his father had already been dismissed as the director of the brick and tile factory. Every time he came home during school holidays, he would always tell him some old stories from the past. Could it be him? Perhaps it's just a coincidence of names, Wang Sheng kept asking himself. But in the end, he couldn't resist his curiosity and went to the lecture. When Wang Sheng walked into the bustling lecture hall, the presentation had already begun. The secretary of the school's youth committee, who was hosting the presentation, was giving an opening speech. Sitting next to him was a young man with slightly curly, brownish-yellow hair, a handsome face, and a pair of light blue eyes that seemed a little melancholy. Wang Sheng stared at those melancholy, light blue eyes and almost cried out, "Oh my God, it's really him! It's his childhood friend, Zhong Tianyi, who had been missing for many years." Throughout the entire lecture, Wang Sheng didn't listen to a single word. He couldn't wait to walk to the podium when it finally ended. Several male and female college students were surrounding Zhong Tianyi, asking him for his autograph. Wang Shengli waited patiently on the edge of the crowd. Zhong Tianyi was taller than the people around him, and he seemed unfamiliar with such a scene. His autographing movements seemed a bit clumsy. When a girl asked him to sign her t-shirt, Wang Shengli saw his face turn red. He hesitated for a moment, but still meticulously signed his name on the girl's t-shirt. After the college students finally dispersed, Wang Shengli walked over and called out, "Zhong Tianyi!" Zhong Tianyi turned around and his gaze fell on Wang Sheng's face. He was stunned for a moment and then recognized him. Two friends who had been separated for a long time embraced tightly when they met again. At that moment, the secretary of the youth committee walked over and said to Zhong Tianyi, "Mana Garzong, the headmaster will personally accompany us for dinner tonight. Let's go." Zhong Tianyi hesitated, and the secretary of the youth committee turned his gaze to Wang Shengli and said, "You are a friend of Mana Garzong. Why don't you come along?" Wang Shengli politely thanked him and said, "No, I have evening self-study." Zhong Tianyi held his hand reluctantly, as if he had much to say to him. "I live in Chuzhou City. Come visit me someday when you have time." He took out a business card from his pocket and handed it to Wang Shengli, solemnly inviting him with sincerity in his eyes. To Chuzhou City, Chuzhou Teachers College is nestled at the foot of Maozhu Mountain, about 10 miles outside the North Gate. The campus boasts a pleasant scenery, albeit somewhat secluded. In the early 1980s, public transportation in Chuzhou City was not yet well developed. The only route from Maozhu Mountain to the city was the dedicated number 34 bus, which ran roughly every 50 minutes. On weekends, the number 34 bus would be packed with students from the college heading into town. After having breakfast in the school cafeteria, Wang Shengli arrived at the number 34 bus stop a bit late, just 2 minutes after the bus had departed. The next bus was scheduled to arrive in 50 minutes. Seeing the pleasant weather, Wang Shengli decided to walk into town. Wang Shengli rarely went to the city, spending most of his weekend time immersed in the library. Since entering school, he had only been to the city twice to purchase books at Xinhua bookstore. Wang Shengli's living expenses were not abundant. Apart from the 15 yuan scholarship provided by the school, his father also gives him 10 yuan of pocket money every month. Apart from purchasing sporadic daily necessities, he can also save money to buy books for himself. Other than reading, Wang Shengli had no other hobbies, which is probably related to his childhood love for reading comic books. From elementary school to junior high school, Wang Shengli bought no less than 100 comic books. Everyone in the brick and tile factory knew he was a bookworm. His father, a soldier, was very strict with him, especially against extravagance and wasteful spending. However, he was never stingy with money when buying books. He would never fail to get what he wanted as long as he asked. After being admitted to the teachers' college, Wang Shengli would go to the library whenever he had time. The library of the teachers' college had an extensive collection of books, but it was limited after all. It wasn't easy to read many new books promptly, so he would go to the city every semester and buy a few books at Xinhua bookstore. Wang Shengli's previous 2 trips to the city were for buying books, always coming and going in a hurry. But today he visited a friend, appearing much more leisurely than usual. As he walked, he admired the scenery along the way. The area north of the city is the vegetable supply base of Chuzhou City. Including the teachers' college, the vegetables and fruits that Chuzhou citizens eat daily were grown here. On both sides of the highway live suburban vegetable farmers and vast vegetable fields in the distance. The rapeseed flowers were in full bloom on a sunny day in March. Looking ahead, the blue sky and white clouds, with waves of flowers rolling, resembled a golden ocean. Swarms of bees flew around in the fields, and the air was filled with the fragrance of soil and rapeseed flowers mixed. Few cars were on the highway, but many pedestrians, mostly vegetable farmers and college students heading into the city. The farmers walked in a hurry to the town to sell their produce. Some rode bicycles, others pulled hand carts, and some carried loads, all laden with fresh vegetables freshly picked from the fields. Some vegetable farmers had just finished their morning market, walking back with empty loads, taking their time and strolling back leisurely. Some held deep-fried dough sticks or yubing, deep-fried round and flat dough cake, in their hands, eating as they walked, their faces filled with satisfaction and joyful smiles. As for the college students heading into the city, they were much more relaxed than the vegetable farmers. Most of them, like Wang Shengli, were visiting friends or sightseeing in the town, not in a hurry. They walked and stopped along the way, and some beauty-conscious girls even ran into the rapeseed fields, chasing and laughing, occasionally bursting into a series of silver bell-like laughter. A few boys, who didn't seem to know the girls, were also infected and couldn't help but run into the rapeseed fields, joining in the revelry. Wang Shengli furrowed his brows slightly. He did not appreciate the behavior of these boys and girls. He felt that as college students, such actions were somewhat frivolous. Now was the season for rapeseed pollination, and how much rapeseed would they waste like this? A large truck loaded with live pigs sped by, stirring up dust that obscured half the sky. After the truck disappeared, the air cleared, and soon the north gate of Chuzhou came into Wang Shengli's view. The city wall of Chuzhou was initially constructed during the Hongwu era of the Ming dynasty. During the Chongzhen era, Li Jiming, the champion king, retreated to Chuzhou after his defeat, only to be subsequently captured by the Qing army. Following this battle, both the west and east gates were completely destroyed, leaving only the north and south gates intact. These gates were currently the best-preserved city gates in Chuzhou. The north gate comprises an inner city gate and an outer city gate. The city gate of the inner city was smaller, while that of the outer city was larger. The moat surrounding the city wall was approximately 10 feet wide, with crystal-clear water that revealed the bottom. One could see the towering reflections of the city walls and gates in summer. However, as early spring and the rainy season had not yet arrived, the dried-up moat bed was exposed, and the river channel was filled with silt and garbage, emitting a pungent stench. Despite this, newcomers to Chuzhou still regard the North Gate as their preferred destination for leisure. Tourists flock here, creating a lively atmosphere. Not far from the North Gate was the crossroads of the Grand Cross Street. The Grand Cross Street was the center of Chuzhou City, and every street in Chuzhou radiated from this point. The crossroads is not only the hub of the entire city, but also the most bustling place. The municipal government, cultural bureau, Xinhua bookstore, cinema, department store, workers' club, photo studio, bank, etc. were all located in this area. From morning till night, crowds of pedestrians were bustling and lively. It is not much inferior to Wangfujing in Beijing or Nanjing Road in Shanghai. Last night, Zhong Tianyi called Wang Shengli and said he would invite him to dine at Zhuzhen Garden for lunch today. Zhuzhen Garden was the most famous time-honored restaurant in Chuzhou, where only wealthy and prestigious individuals dined. Ordinary people and students like Wang Shengli could only look on in awe. Zhong Tianyi could invite him to eat at such a place, which showed that he had really made a fortune. Wang Shengli thought, looking at his watch, it was not even 10 o'clock, which was still early for the appointed time. He walked towards the Xinhua bookstore diagonally opposite the cinema. Xinhua bookstore was a square-shaped, gray, 3-story building. Prominently displayed at the entrance were 2 quotations from famous figures. "Books are the ladder of human progress, Gorky, and knowledge is power, Bacon." As it was a weekend, the bookstore was crowded, bustling like a market. Most of the customers were students with some well-dressed cadres, and occasionally a few workers in denim overalls, as well as farmers with messy hair and dusty clothes. Despite their diverse identities, they did not feel out of place when crowded together, appearing harmonious and natural. Disputes rarely occurred if someone stepped on someone else's foot or got bumped. Being in this space surrounded by books, even rude people would become polite, kind, and cultured, and even their voices were much lower than usual. People's eyes roamed or paused in front of the bookshelves filled with undisturbed and highly focused books. This is an atmosphere that only a bookstore could provide. Wang Sheng liked this atmosphere. When he was a child, he would spend half a day in front of the book counter every time he went to the Pai Town Supply and Marketing Cooperative. Whenever he encountered troubles, he would feel better after spending time in the bookstore. The first floor of the bookstore was mainly devoted to comic books and educational and supplementary reading materials for primary and secondary school students. Seeing a group of teenagers lingering around the comic books, occasionally bursting into laughter and chatter, Wang Sheng seemed to see his former self, with memories flashing through his mind of the comic books he once bought and the endless fun he had playing war games with his friends. A hint of a self-deprecating smile appeared on his lips. The second floor of the bookstore was dedicated to adult reading materials such as literature and philosophy. Compared to the noisy and bustling atmosphere on the first floor, it feels much quieter, resembling a library. Among the customers, there were a few familiar faces. Wang Sheng recognized them as students from the teacher's college. They also noticed Wang Sheng and exchanged a smile. This was the only large bookstore in Chuzhou, and it's common for Wang Sheng to run into his classmates from the teacher's college every time he visited. Wang Sheng walked to the new book display and noticed that many books were new to him from his previous visit to the bookstore. His eyes sparkled like a hungry person seeing a sumptuous feast, and he eagerly began flipping through them. Among them was the Towards the Future series edited by Jin Guantao, which had been highly recommended by teachers at his college in class. Wang Sheng had already purchased several books from this series. Now, he saw two newly published books, The Modernization of Human Beings and Builders in the Era of Great Changes, as well as Li Zheho's The Course of Beauty and Lin Yutang's The Feast of Life. These new books are currently being hotly debated in the academic community. Wang Sheng studied Chinese at Chuzhou Teachers College, but he rarely bought literary books. Most of the books he purchased were in philosophy and history. When Wang Sheng took a few books and went down from the second floor to the first floor to queue up for payment, it was already past 11 o'clock, nearing the time agreed upon with Zhong Tianyi. Zhuzhen Garden, located next to the People's Bank of Chuzhou, was an old house from the Republic of China era. Its red walls and gray tiles featured glazed tiles along the eaves, reflecting a dazzling light when illuminated by sunlight or lights. At the main entrance were two stone lions, one on each side, each about half the height of a person. A row of large red lanterns hung under the eaves, giving it a majestic appearance from afar. It was the first time for Wang Sheng to enter such a high-end venue. As he approached the entrance, he involuntarily slowed down his pace. As he hesitated, he saw Zhong Tianyi walking out the door, and he greeted him from afar. Just like the last time at the teacher's college, Zhong Tianyi was still dressed in a suit and leather shoes, with his boots spotlessly clean and shining. When the two walked into the restaurant side by side, the waiter at the door bowed respectfully to Zhong Tianyi, but ignored Wang Sheng beside him. Zhong Tianyi was a regular customer here. Although it was just noon, the restaurant hall was already packed. The waiters serving the dishes shuttled back and forth in an orderly manner, devoid of the chaos and noise often found in ordinary small restaurants. When Wang Sheng followed Zhong Tianyi into the private room on the second floor, he saw that there was already someone inside. "This is Du Wei, also my friend," Zhong Tianyi introduced to Wang Sheng after he sat down. Wang Sheng sized up Du Wei, noticing that he was a head taller than himself and had a pair of eagle-like eyes that gave off an intimidating vibe when he looked at others. "My name is Wang Sheng, from Chuzhou Teachers College." Wang Sheng introduced himself, but before he could finish, Du Wei interrupted him and said sarcastically, "The Wang Cheng from Heroic Sons and Daughters? Nice to meet you." Du Wei may have been just a joke with no other intention, but Wang Sheng's face blushed slightly. "Du Wei is a young photographer quite famous in Chuzhou City," Zhong Tianyi continued. "He used to live in Pai Town, and we only met a few days ago." "What photographer? I'm just a photography enthusiast," Du Wei said, glancing at Wang Sheng, sounding both humble and proud. Every graduation season, I take graduation photos to the teacher's college. Which department are you in? Chinese department, said Wang Sheng. Oh, I've been invited to take graduation photos by several other departments, but not the Chinese department, Du Wei said regretfully, eyeing Wang Sheng. How about I take some artistic photos for you someday? Sure, thank you, Wang Sheng said casually. He suddenly felt like he had seen Du Wei somewhere, but it wasn't in Pai Town. It was at the north gate of Chuzhou City. Yes, many self-employed photographers were at the north gate, with cameras hanging on their chests and tripods on their shoulders, shuttling among the tourists like fish, soliciting business. When Wang Sheng first entered the city after passing the college entrance examination, he had taken 2 photos with some classmates on the North Gate Tower, 1 group photo and 1 individual photo. The self-employed photographer had long hair and wore washed-out jeans, looking not much older than himself. That was the second time Wang Sheng had taken a photo in his life. The first time was when he graduated from Pai Town Middle School and took a graduation photo, so the impression was profound. Yes, it was indeed him, especially those eagle eyes, which were too familiar. Wang Sheng thought. Zhong Tianyi left the private room at an unknown time. The two continued their conversation. According to Zhong Tianyi, you're a top student from a teacher's college? Du Wei took a book from the plastic bag placed on the chair by Wang Sheng, flipped through it, put it back, took another book, flipped through it and put it back again. He muttered, "These books you bought are too abstruse for me. Like Zhong Tianyi, I didn't finish junior high school. Nowadays, there's a saying that if someone hasn't attended university, they're half illiterate. So, in front of you, my younger brother, I'm an illiterate who can take pictures." He obviously found this sentence humorous and burst out laughing. Wang Sheng felt that his laughter was a bit exaggerated and artificial, but out of politeness, he also laughed a few times. At that moment, Zhong Tianyi returned from outside, followed by a girl of about 15 or 16. She had 2 braids and was dressed in simple attire. Her facial features were exquisite, and she looked very much like Zhong Tianyi's sister, especially her melancholy eyes, which were strikingly similar. "This is my sister Gu Zheng, who is currently studying in high school at Chuzhou Middle School," Zhong Tianyi introduced the girl to Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng had long known that Zhong Tianyi had a younger sister. He had seen her in Pai Town before, but Gu Zheng was still a little girl with unkempt hair back then. Seeing Wang Sheng sizing her up, Gu Zheng glanced at him hurriedly and then shyly lowered her eyelids. Du Wei stood up, pulled a chair over, and warmly greeted Gu Zheng. "We've been waiting for you. Come, sit here." From his tone, it seemed he had known Gu Zheng for a long time. However, Gu Zheng didn't walk over and sit beside his brother. Zhong Tianyi then asked the waiter to serve the dishes. The dishes were abundant, filling the entire table, all of which Wang Sheng rarely ate in his daily life. How much would such a table of dishes cost? He couldn't help but wonder. For a student, it was indeed a bit extravagant. Zhong Tianyi kept putting food into Gu Zheng's bowl, saying, "Eat more and take good care of yourself. The food in your school cafeteria is too bland." He then turned to Wang Sheng and said, "You should also eat more. Today, let's treat you 2 students to a better meal." Du Wei pried open the lid of a bottle of Wuyang Ye and poured a full glass for Zhong Tianyi. When pouring for Wang Sheng, he covered the glass in front of him with his hand and said, "Thank you. I don't drink alcohol." Du Wei said, "Brother, that's not right. You and I are friends. We haven't seen each other for years. It's not right not to drink a little wine after finally getting together." Wang Sheng insisted on not letting Du Wei pour him a drink. Du Wei held the bottle and was in a standoff with Wang Sheng. Zhong Tianyi signaled to Du Wei, waved his hand, and said, "Wang Sheng is a student. Let him and Gu Zheng have soft drinks if he doesn't want to drink." There was still a can of Coke on the table. Wang Sheng took it and poured a glass for Gu Zheng and himself. This was the best meal Wang Sheng had ever eaten in his life. There were very few dishes left on the table. Zhong Tianyi and Du Wei had an excellent capacity for alcohol. The bottle of Wu Liahengye on the table was almost empty, and after finishing the Bei Jiu, the two started drinking beer again. As they drank, they kept talking, and their voices became louder and louder, making Wang Sheng's eardrums buzz. The private room was filled with a strong aroma of alcohol and dishes. Wang Sheng rarely spoke, and Gu Zheng, who sat beside Zhong Tianyi, was no exception. Since entering the private room, Gu Zheng had said little, and she didn't even seem to care about what Zhong Tianyi and Du Wei were saying, as if they were two strangers. Wang Sheng had a vague feeling that Gu Zheng was somewhat introverted, possessing something that middle school students her age didn't have, but he couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. Upon seeing that there was still some coke left in the can, Zhong Tianyi poured it for Gu Zheng and Wang Sheng. As he poured, he said to Gu Zheng, "Wang Sheng is a top student from a teacher's college. He's read a lot of books." "Brother, you should drink less," said Gu Zheng, reaching out to take Zhong Tianyi's wine glass, but he blocked her. "It's okay. Your brother is happy today. In the future, you should learn more from Wang Sheng." His tongue was slightly slurred, indicating that he had clearly had too much to drink. "Learn from me? I can't take that responsibility," Wang Sheng said, glancing at Gu Zheng. "Chuzhou is a key middle school in the province, and every year more than half of its students are admitted to prestigious universities." Hearing Wang Sheng say this, Gu Zheng, who rarely smiled, actually burst out laughing. She was quite cute when she smiled, but she rarely smiled, spoke little, and looked like she kept people at a distance. This was not like her brother at all. Wang Sheng's words made Zhong Tianyi a little unhappy. "Don't shirk your responsibilities. When I'm not in Chuzhou, you two should take good care of Gu Zheng if she needs anything." The latter half of the sentence was addressed to Wang Sheng and Du Wei. "Don't worry, your sister is my sister." Du Wei patted his chest loudly. His face flushed red from drinking, and he had put on a layer of paint. Wang Sheng remained silent, sizing up Gu Zheng sitting across from him, wondering, what could she possibly need our help with? 3. Evening talks in the ancient city. It was already 2 in the afternoon when the 4 of them left the private room. The peak dining period had passed, and the number of customers at Zhuzhen Garden had decreased significantly, leaving the spacious first-floor restaurant feeling empty. Zhong Tianyi stood beneath the row of lanterns at the entrance of Zhuzhen Garden and said to Du Wei, "Photographer, take a photo of me and Wang Sheng together." Du Wei's mind remained clear despite having had too much to drink. He said, "Okay," and got busy. After taking photos of Wang Sheng and Zhong Tianyi, he proceeded to take pictures of Zhong Tianyi and Gu Zheng's siblings. Finally, he handed the camera to the waiter, and the 4 of them stood in a row for another group photo. His efficiency reminded Wang Sheng of the self-employed photographer he had seen at the North Gate. "Let's go and explore the city walls," said Zhong Tianyi in high spirits. Gu Zheng said, "Brother, I want to return to school." Zhong Tianyi glanced at his sister and hesitated for a moment. "Okay, let's send you back to school first," he said. Without asking Du Wei and Wang Sheng for their opinions, he affectionately held his sister's arm and walked across the road. Chuzhou Middle School is less than 100 meters from Xinhua Bookstore and is just a blink of an eye away. At the school gate, Gu Zheng broke free from her brother's arm around her and waved to Wang Sheng and Du Wei, who were following behind before entering the school gate. Zhong Tianyi stood at the school gate, watching Gu Zheng's figure disappear before turning around and saying to Wang Sheng and Du Wei, "Let's go." The 3 of them walked together and headed over to the city wall. The city wall could be reached by turning into an alley next to Xinhua Bookstore and walking not far. From the north gate to the east gate, it was the best preserved section of the city wall in Chuzhou City. Usually, many people visited the city wall from here. Today was a weekend, so although it was already afternoon, the city wall was still bustling with people. Tourists, individual photographers soliciting business, and merchants selling souvenirs and snacks were crowded together, lively like a market. Below the city wall, Du Wei stopped an old lady selling ice lollies and bought 3, one for each person. Then he took the lead to climb up the city wall. Upon reaching the top of the wall, the view suddenly broadened. Looking into the city, the rows of roofs and crisscrossing roads like a chessboard presented themselves before people's eyes like a painting. Looking outward, in the distance were vast and flat fields and residential areas, with occasional tall chimneys rising, emitting thick black smoke from the chimney mouths like a large broom, making the blue sky look smoggy. That was the largest enterprise in Chuzhou City, Chuzhou Chemical Plant. Seeing this chimney reminds me of our town's brick and tile factory. Back then, I even worked in a brick and tile factory, Zhang Tianyi said, pointing to the chimney of the chemical plant. Compared to the chimney of the chemical plant, the one of the brick and tile factory in Pai Town is nothing, Du Wei said disdainfully. Zhang Tianyi and Du Wei exchanged words, while Wang Sheng looked silently at the large chimney resembling a cigar. He thought of his father, who had been dismissed as the director of the brick and tile factory, and felt a bit dazed. Unknowingly, they arrived at the entrance of the North Gate Tower. The sun had already set, casting a golden glow on the city walls, resembling a giant python clad in golden armor. As they descended the tower, the bustling city gate had already emptied, with only a few tourists in sight. Zhang Tianyi paused and said to Du Wei, "You go home. Wang Sheng and I will take a stroll for a while." "I'll stay with you a bit longer," said Du Wei. Wang Sheng looked at Zhang Tianyi and said, "It's getting late. I have to go back to school too." "Don't go back to school today. Stay in the city for the night." Zhang Tianyi patted Wang Sheng on the shoulder and said, "I still have a lot to talk to you about." Zhang Tianyi's words sounded like a plea and an order at the same time, and Wang Sheng felt unable to refuse. Seeing the situation, Du Wei said goodbye and parted ways with them. As soon as Zhang Tian saw Du Wei walking away, he whispered, "Du Wei's house is not far ahead." Then the two walked side by side along the moat. When it got dark, Zhang Tianyi brought Wang Sheng back to his company, a 3-story house on a small street not far from the North Gate. The Baju Red River Valley Agricultural and Industrial Company sign hung at the entrance looked very new, as if it had just been put up not long ago. The first and second floors were used for office purposes, while the company's employees lived on the 3rd floor. Zhang Tianyi always stayed here whenever he came to Chuzhou. It was already time to get off work, and the company's main door was locked. Zhang Tianyi took out his key, and while unlocking the door, introduced to Wang Sheng, "The company's headquarters is in Baju, and this is just a temporary rental for our branch office. I bought a piece of land outside the North Gate, and construction will start in the second half of the year. Next year, the company can move into a new building for office use." Oh. As they were talking, the door opened and Wang Sheng followed Zhang Tianyi inside. The lighting in the building was dim, and the two of them almost groped their way up to the 3rd floor in the dark. Zhang Tianyi's dormitory was a mess, with folders, lunch boxes, packing boxes, and unwashed clothes scattered everywhere. Seeing Wang Sheng's surprised expression, Zhang Tianyi smiled bitterly and said, "I travel between Baju and Chuzhou, and I don't stay in one place for more than a month at a time. There's no way around it. Both dormitories are a mess unless Kestrel comes." Wang Sheng asked, "Who is Kestrel?" "My wife." "I thought you weren't married." "My son is almost a year old." Zhang Tianyi smiled at Wang Sheng with a slightly odd expression. "And you, do you have a partner?" "Not yet." Wang Sheng was most afraid of being asked this question. Fortunately, Zhang Tianyi didn't pursue the matter further. He had overeaten at noon and didn't feel like eating anything in the evening. After a brief wash, the two of them lay down on the bed with their clothes on. Zhang Tianyi placed an ashtray and a pack of cigarettes on the bedside table. He took out a cigarette and asked Wang Sheng if he wanted one. Wang Sheng shook his head, so he lit the cigarette with a lighter and assumed a posture for a long chat. "Wang Sheng, I've been wanting to talk to someone about my inner thoughts for a long time." He took a deep breath and said, "In recent years, I've been traveling back and forth between Baju, Chuzhou, and Redstone Valley for business, dealing with all kinds of people and meeting many of them. There are officials, businessmen, and people from all walks of life, but none are real friends. Du Wei, this person is quite righteous, but also very smart in Chuzhou City, is a character, but not the kind of friend who can pull out the heart. With him, I can talk about business, about women, about anything. But I feel that there is always a layer of things, exactly what is separated, I cannot say. You are different. If you and your father had not given me information, I would have been arrested by the police. I've always treated you as a good friend. When I met you at the teacher's college that day, you didn't know how happy I was, just like meeting a relative. You know, in this world, I only have my sister Gu Zheng as a relative." Zhang Tianyi's words flowed freely. He talked about his parents, about the days and nights he spent after escaping from Pai Town into Pigu Mountain, about the white-haired old man and the mute father and son deep in the mountains, about the Redstone Valley, and about his journey from meeting to falling in love with Kestrel. He also shared his legendary experience of how he became the young master of the Redstone Valley village from a miner in a small coal mine. Finally, he talked about his entrepreneurial history of gradually expanding the business of the small coal mine from the Redstone Valley to places like Baju and Chuzhou. Zhang Tianyi's journey is steeped in legend, sounding like something out of a fairy tale, hard to believe. Yet, upon reflection, it seems logical and reasonable. Behind this captivating story lies an irrefutable logic of life and an inevitable, irresistible fate. This feeling, Wang Sheng had only experienced when reading long novels with intricate plots. He had a peculiar sensation, as if the Zhang Tianyi before him was not a real person, but a fictional character from a novel like The Count of Monte Cristo or Jean Valjean. For Wang Sheng, this was destined to be a peculiar night. Thanks to Zhang Tianyi's narration, this night felt both fleeting and interminable. Fleeting because dawn was approaching before Zhang Tianyi's tale was even finished. Interminable because it seemed as if Zhang Tianyi's tumultuous experiences over the past few years had been compressed into just one night, leaving him feeling as if he had swallowed a bag of compressed biscuits, struggling to digest it. "Wang Cheng, are you listening?" Zhang Tianyi's voice came from the other side of the bed, somewhat ethereal, as if it came from some distant place. "I'm listening," Wang Sheng replied. There was a moment when he was caught by drowsiness and almost fell asleep, but as Zhang Tianyi's narration entered a new paragraph, his sleepiness quickly disappeared. This was almost exactly the same feeling he had when he read novels in the middle of the night as a child. "Do you think I'm making up stories?" Zhang Tianyi seemed tired of talking, and his voice lowered slightly. "Actually, not to mention you, sometimes when I think about my experiences over the years, it feels like I've been in a dream. I always feel that everything will disappear cleanly after waking up, as if nothing ever happened. That's why I can't wait to find someone to talk to. Only in this way can I feel more at ease and believe what I'm saying really happened, rather than being fabricated by me." In the darkness, Wang Sheng heard the click of a lighter as Zhang Tianyi lit another cigarette. On this night, Wang Sheng couldn't keep track of how many cigarettes he had smoked. "Wang Cheng, I'm deeply conflicted. Sometimes I wish all of this were just a dream and life could return to how it was before, to when I was just born. Every evening after dinner, my parents and I would take a walk on the streets of Pai Town, and the air was filled with the fragrance of tun trees. But sometimes I feared that everything that had happened over these years was just a dream. If that's the case, then Redstone Valley, Kestrel, and my son, who is about to turn 1, wouldn't exist. However, all of this is also beautiful, and I fear losing them. I'm deeply conflicted, just like how I once desperately wanted to know the truth about my father's disappearance but didn't dare to face everything about him, including my grandfather." Zhang Tianyi's expression turned grave, and after a moment of silence, he continued. Once I found several letters in the rattan wooden box my father left behind. They were written to my father by a foreign woman named Anna Louise. In the letters, she said that my grandfather was named Zhang Da, and he was once a great scholar who held a high position in the Communist Party. However, he later defected to the Kuomintang and became a major traitor. I didn't believe it was true. At that time, I was in junior high school at Pai Town Middle School. I secretly went to the school library to check, and there was indeed a traitor named Zhang Da in the history books. His wife was a foreign woman named Anna Louise, the same woman who wrote these letters to my father. In other words, she is my grandmother. When she wrote these letters to my father, she was in prison, charged with being a foreign spy. When Zhang Tianyi said this, he smiled bitterly. I used to hear that my grandfather was a high-ranking official in the province, and I often clamored for my parents to take me back to the provincial capital to visit him. But these letters suddenly shattered my dreams. It turned out that the high-ranking official wasn't my real grandfather. My real grandfather was a traitor. I felt a sense of disillusionment that I had never experienced before, even when my father disappeared. I knew what traitor and spy meant. Without thinking, I threw the wooden crate and the letters and records inside into the pond outside the purple tile house, except for the book Jin Ping Mei. At that time, I would rather wish I was an orphan. It was the first time Wang Sheng heard Zhang Tianyi talk about his family history. In the dim light of the fire and smoke, he saw Zhang Tianyi's expression appear so confused and helpless. You know, I only went to junior high school and don't have much education. Every time I go on a business trip, I have to buy 2 magazines to pass the time. Not long ago, I read an article in Reader's Digest that said that everyone's destiny cannot be chosen because it is not we who decide our destiny, but a pair of mysterious big hands. To Westerners, this pair of mysterious hands is God. Still, in the hearts of the Chinese, that article doesn't say, "You are a college student. Tell me, what exactly dominates our destiny and governs our fate?" Zhang Tianyi's question was too sudden and too complicated, and Wang Sheng couldn't answer it right away. Fortunately, Zhang Tianyi didn't expect him to respond and continued, "I often dream, and every time I wake up, my mind is always blank, and I can't remember who I am. Every time I pass by some temples on business trips, I have to go in and burn a few incense, but I am not a Buddhist, of course, nor am I a party member or even a league member. However, last year, the Chuzhou City Youth Luhag Committee gave me the title New Long March Pace Setter." As Zhang Tianyi spoke, he probably felt this matter was absurd and couldn't help laughing. "I'm not a Luhag member either," Wang Sheng murmured as if defending himself. But why was he defending himself? To whom was he defending himself? "Oh, yes. When I returned to Pai Town a few years ago, I planned to visit you, but I bumped into Badong instead. From him, I learned that you had been admitted to a teacher's college and that Badong's father had taken over as the director of the brick and tile factory from your father. How is your father? I am so grateful to him, the old man." Zhang Tianyi's words made Wang Sheng's heart sink, and he didn't know how to respond. On many issues, a person's wisdom is not reflected in how many books he has read or how high his academic qualifications are. Just like now, when he and Zhang Tianyi faced those big questions about fate together, they didn't know how to answer them. When Wang Sheng thought of this, he was suddenly gripped by a sense of weakness and powerlessness similar to Zhang Tianyi's. This sense of weakness and helplessness did not arise from listening to Zhang Tianyi's family history, but had been lurking deep within his heart for a long time, only to be awakened today. A streak of fish-belly white appeared outside the window, and the sounds of the city faintly drifted in from outside. The roar of passing cars, the chaotic footsteps of early morning pedestrians on the street, and various mixed sounds blended into a symphony. The sky was gradually brightening. However, Wang Sheng felt as if he was still shrouded in darkness, a feeling often experienced by individuals when facing their inner selves. At such moments, day and night, past and future, individual and world, ideals and reality often present a state of confusion and ambiguity. In his book The Way to the Middle of the Road, Heidegger referred to this state as the poverty of the world's night. Heidegger was the most respected existentialist philosopher in Chinese intellectual circles and was almost a mythical figure among many scholars. When Wang Sheng was a freshman, he bought a thick copy of Being and Time from Xinhua Bookstore after listening to a professor from the Department of Philosophy at Dongjiang University lecture on Heidegger at Chuzhou Teachers College. Later, he borrowed a biography of Heidegger from the library and discovered that Heidegger had actually sided with the Nazis during World War II, betraying his teacher, the famous philosopher Edmund Husserl, and abandoning his female student Arendt, whom he had always loved, like a discarded shoe. Since then, Heidegger's status in his mind plummeted, and that copy of Being and Time was also put away in a box. He was shrouded in confusion and loss for a long time. "My dad often talks about you too," said Wang Sheng, pulling himself back from his thoughts and following up on Zhang Tianyi's remark. "Your father is a good man. Next time I return to Pai Town, I will definitely go and see him." Zhang Tianyi took a deep breath, stubbed out his cigarette, turned over, and after a while, a light snore sounded. Wang Sheng, however, had no desire to sleep. Zhang Tianyi's question, "Who am I?" flitted around in his mind like a butterfly. Later, he finally fell asleep and quickly entered the realm of dreams. He dreamed of Pai Town and the towering chimney of the brick factory, of the toy gun made from bullet casings and comic books his father gave him. And of course, he also dreamed of his mother, who had passed away many years ago. He even dreamed of Badong, holding a long red plume spear. At this moment, dreams became his reality. In his dreams, reality became a dream for him. In his dream, his father looked at him with an unfamiliar gaze and asked, "Who are you?" Wang Sheng said, "I'm your son." "No, you are not my son," the father shook his head and said indifferently, "My son's name is Wang Cheng, and you are Wang Sheng." "I'm not Wang Cheng," he said in confusion. "Then who am I?" "I don't know who you are." My father's wrinkled face revealed a sorrowful expression, and the empty sleeve fluttered in the wind, rustling like a tattered flag. Not long after being admitted to Chuzhou Teachers College, Wang Cheng changed his name to Wang Sheng, for go home. In fact, from the moment Wang Sheng walked through the gate of Chuzhou Teachers College, he was entangled by the question of, "Who am I?" like a whirlpool. The more books he read, the deeper he fell into it. For Wang Sheng, this was not just a metaphysical proposition taught in class, but a very specific issue. He increasingly disliked his name, Wang Cheng. During his first class after entering school, when the teacher called out Wang Cheng during roll call, the classmates all turned their gaze toward him with expressions of surprise, mockery, and even discrimination that were only seen when facing an outlier or an inappropriate person. Once, when the school showed the movie Heroic Sons and Daughters, when the screen showed the volunteer soldier shouting, "For the victory, fire at me!" into the walkie-talkie, several classmates sitting next to Wang Sheng prankingly shouted at him, "Wang Cheng, did you fire?" while whistling. In the mouths of many boys, fire implied sex, which was a vulgar and ambiguous word. Wang Sheng felt a sense of shame that he had never experienced before. Once upon a time, the name Wang Cheng was still an admirable symbol, representing bravery, dedication, heroism, nobility, and so on. He often expressed uncontrollable pride and satisfaction in his heart, especially when leading his friends to play war games. Due to this name, he seemed qualified to play a positive role naturally. But somehow everything changed. Many figures once regarded as heroes were no longer the objects of learning, nor were they respected and admired. Sometimes, they even became the objects of mockery and humiliation. When Wang Sheng was still in middle school in Pai Town, he read an article in the newspaper saying that Lei Feng's diary was forged and that the landlord Zhou Bapi was actually a kind and benevolent person. Liu Wenshui deserved to be strangled to death by the landlord, who only stole a little chili from the commune. However, he was too unreasonable not to let it go. In Wang Sheng's teenage years, both Lei Feng and Liu Wenshui were heroes in his mind. He once carried cow dung from the roadside to the collective crop field to learn from them. For a long time, he was proud of this behavior, but now he no longer felt proud but somewhat embarrassed, as if it was something shameful. Wang Sheng was deeply puzzled by this. In this confusion, he grew from a teenager into a young man. When he stepped into the gate of Chuzhou Teachers College, he realized that a new era had arrived. Everyone was bidding farewell to the past era, including the past me, fearing this new era would abandon them. In the process, he suddenly realized that his name had become a stumbling block on his path to a new era. He had to remove it, just as he forgot the heroes of his youth. In the face of the new era's tide, no one wanted to fall behind or be left out. As a college student, Wang Sheng was even more so. In the second semester of his freshman year, Wang Sheng decided to change his name. He flipped through the Xinhua dictionary and found many alternative names: Wang Sheng, Wang Sheng, Wang Sheng, Wang Sheng, Wang Fu, Wang Chen, Wang Sheng, Wang Sheng Shung. Then he went to the police station, but the registered residence police officer said students must get their parents' consent to change their name. During the vacation, Wang Sheng went home and told his father about changing his name. His father asked him why he wanted to change his name. He hesitated and said after a long pause, "This name is too rustic." He didn't tell his father the real reason for changing his name, but made an excuse. But his father got angry, glared at him, and said, "You think this name is rustic? Do you also despise your father?" His father barked, "After going to college for a few days, you want to change even the name your father gave you. This is forgetting your roots. Your mother and I have worked hard to raise you, and it seems like we raised a white-eyed wolf." The more his father spoke, the angrier he became. Wang Sheng had never seen his father so angry before. If I reveal the real reason for changing my name, with his irascible temper, he would definitely beat me up, Wang Sheng thought, and then he fell silent. He secretly resented his father for giving him such an inappropriate name. This resentment had been buried in his heart for a long time. Later, when he took a class on the history of foreign literature and listened to the teacher talk about the ancient Greek tragedy, Oedipus Rex, he learned a trendy new term: patricide complex. He found a legitimate reason for his resentment towards his father and felt at ease. He borrowed a copy of Family by Bajin from the library. This novel was published in the 1930s and has become a bestseller after being reprinted in recent years. Also reprinted was Fortress Besieged by Qian Zhongshu. Wang Sheng reads very fast, a skill he honed from reading comic books as a child. He finished a novel of over 200,000 words in 2 nights. For several days, Wang Sheng was immersed in the world of the story. Although he lived in the 1980s, he felt like the protagonist Jue Hui, who was suffering from the oppression of a feudal family. He regarded his father as the patriarch of the family and was filled with a strong urge to break free from old concepts and old culture. The relationship between Wang Sheng and his father became increasingly tense. During his freshman year's summer vacation and his sophomore year's winter vacation, he didn't return home. A few days before the spring festival, Wang Sheng suddenly received a telegram with only 4 words: "Father ill, return urgently." At that time, Wang Shengli had already retired. With his revolutionary experience before liberation, he could have been allocated a house in the town, but he used his retirement pension to build a home on the riverbank. When his father proposed to build a house on the riverbank, Wang Sheng strongly opposed it. He couldn't understand why his father would choose to live on the desolate riverbank instead of the spacious and comfortable house in the town. The two had a big argument over this. After the house was built, Wang Sheng only went back once and stayed for only 1 night before returning to school. Looking at the telegram sent by his father, Wang Sheng's initially calm heart suddenly became agitated. He hurriedly packed his bags and boarded the bus back to Pai Town without thinking about anything else. When the shuttle bus arrived in Pai Town, it was already 5 p.m. In winter, days were short and nights were long, so it got dark early. The streets were empty, with few pedestrians in sight. Wang Sheng wanted to find a tricycle, so he walked into the town for a while. He noticed that the original stone road had been replaced with cement and widened significantly. The tun trees on both sides of the street were replaced by 2 rows of low-growing sycamore trees, common roadside trees in big cities. In recent years, the greening of Pai Town has become increasingly urbanized. Wang Cheng finally found a tricycle. Without even asking the price, he couldn't wait to ask the driver to take him to the riverbank. On the riverbank, not far from the brick and tile factory, he asked the driver to stop the tricycle and then walked along the embankment slope towards the river beach. The evening mist hung low over the riverbank, reducing visibility. After passing through the wave-proof forest, Wang Sheng saw the house after only a few steps. When Wang Sheng walked into his home, he saw his father sitting in the main room, puffing away on a cigarette, not looking at all sick. Wang Sheng hesitated and stopped, as if he had mistaken the door. "Dad, aren't you sick?" Wang Sheng asked in confusion. "If I don't say I'm sick, will you return?" Father smiled slyly. "Little bastard, do you really want your father to spend the new year alone?" Wang Sheng was a little afraid of his father since he was young. His father, who was a soldier and had been accustomed to being a leader, always gave orders and commands in everything he did. "Go buy me a pack of cigarettes," or "go get me a bottle of wine." If he were naughty, he would inevitably get a beating. Therefore, for a long time, his father had always been a feared and dignified figure in Wang Sheng's mind. After his mother's death, his father's temperament became much better, and he rarely got beaten again, but he still scolded him easily. His father, who was not highly educated, seemed used to expressing his feelings rudely. But when Wang Sheng returned home this time, he felt that his father's attitude towards him had undergone a noticeable change. If his father had always treated him like a child before, he began to treat him like an adult, speaking kindly and doing things in a consultative tone, even cautiously, with a hint of ingratiation. Wang Sheng felt that this was the result of the conflict he had had with his father over the name change some time ago. Through this Cold War, he finally gained the right to live equally with his father, and a trace of joy flashed through Wang Sheng's heart. The temperature at night was frigid. After having dinner with his father, Wang Sheng sat face to face by the fireplace in the main room, warming himself. The firewood was dried tree stumps dug up on the riverbank and crackled as it burned. The red coals illuminated half of the room, casting the father and son's shadows onto the main room's wall. Wang Sheng noticed that his father's shadow on the wall was much shorter than his own, with that empty sleeve hanging on one side like a crumbling cliff. When he was young, Wang Sheng saw his father as an unattainable mountain peak. This mountain had become so low, not just low, but almost ready to collapse. Indeed, his father was no longer the imposing brick factory director. He had aged. "Dad, I want to apply for graduate school after graduation," said Wang Sheng. The father seemed a little unfamiliar with this term. "Graduate student?" "Yes, I'm applying for graduate school at Dongjiang University," Wang Sheng repeated. His tone wasn't one of consultation with his father, but instead of informing him of his decision. The father understood his son's intention and didn't say anything, just puffing on his cigarette. When he finished smoking and threw the butt into the fire pit, splashing a cloud of sparks, he lifted his face, which resembled a baked sweet potato. He looked at his son with a pair of eyes that had lost their sharpness and edge. "Dongjiang University? Good. Back in the day, my comrades and I raised the first 5-starred red flag over the enemy's city defense headquarters." This was a story that father had told countless times before, and Wang Cheng's ears were almost getting calloused from hearing it. His face revealed a look of boredom. "Tomorrow was the Lesser New Year. Go and add some earth to your mother's grave." My father tactfully changed the subject. "Your mother has been gone for 10 years. Before going to study at Chuzhou Teachers College, Wang Sheng would visit his mother's grave every year during the Qingming Festival and New Year's Eve. The next morning, Wang Sheng followed his father to his mother's grave. His father carried a shovel, while Wang Sheng carried a dustpan. His mother's grave is located on the riverbank not far from the house, separated by a patch of mixed woods and grassland. It took only a moment to reach. Wang Sheng noticed that his mother's grave had become slightly lower than it was 2 years ago, and the words on the tombstone had become much more blurred. On the grave were the remains of the incense and candles that his father burned when he came to sweep the grave during the Qingming festival. Surrounding the grave was a soil borrow site for a brick and tile factory, with potholes and depressions that were as high as mountains and as low as lakes. At first, Wang Sheng didn't understand why his father wanted to build a house in such a barren place, but later he realized that his father did it to be with his mother. He had heard his father say to him more than once, "When I die, I will be buried with your mother." It took Wang Sheng many years to understand the affection his father had for his mother. One cannot be said to have matured if they do not know love. Growing up does not equate to maturity. From this perspective, Wang Sheng was not yet an actual adult, even though he was already 20 years old. Wang Sheng and his father had been working all morning, and it was almost noon after they had finished adding soil to their mother's grave. Before they even reached home, they saw a young man of about his age at the door, carrying bags big and small, shouting at Wang Sheng, "Wang Sheng!" After approaching, Wang Sheng recognized him as Ba Dong. After several years, Ba Dong had grown significantly taller. He was wearing a blue and white checkered down jacket, with his hair styled long, presenting a fashionable urbanite look. Wang Sheng and his childhood friend had always been outwardly friendly but inwardly estranged. During the college entrance examination, Ba Dong failed to pass and later repeated 2 years at Pai Town Middle School, but was still unable to get into university. In the latter half of this year, Ba Dong transferred to Chuzhou Middle School to repeat the year. To facilitate the transfer, Ba Dong's father, Ba Guangming, now the director of a brick and tile factory, made a special trip to Chuzhou to host a banquet and give gifts, spending a considerable amount of money. Wang Sheng learned all of this from another middle school classmate. Wang Sheng was a little surprised when he saw Ba Dong. He looked at the bags in his hands and asked in surprise, "Ba Dong, what are you doing?" "Oh, isn't it the New Year? The factory is distributing New Year goods, and I happened to come across it, so I brought it over," he said, politely greeting Wang Shengli on the side. "Uncle Wang here's another 100 yuan. My dad said it's a bonus for you." As Ba Dong spoke, he took a red envelope from his pocket and handed it over. However, Wang Shengli didn't even raise his eyelids and walked straight into the house, saying, "I've already retired. What kind of bonus is this? If there's a bonus, it should be given to those workers first. They haven't even received their salaries. My dad said you are the former factory director, and you contributed to the development of the brick and tile factory." Holding the red envelope, Ba Dong wanted to follow Wang Shengli into the house, but Wang Shengli slammed the door shut. Ba Dong was in a dilemma, so he turned his gaze to Wang Sheng and said awkwardly, "Look at this." Seeing his father's stiff attitude towards Ba Dong, Wang Sheng felt somewhat sorry for him and took the red packet. After all, the latter was here to deliver New Year's gifts. It's not polite to strike a person offering help with a smile. However, he didn't say anything. He knew there had always been tension between his father and Ba Guangming. A few years ago, his father reported Ba Guangming for corruption to his superiors, causing a massive stir in Pai Town and the brick and tile factory. At that time, Wang Sheng was studying at Pai Town Middle School and even helped his father write a report letter. Ba Dong looked grateful for his old classmate's help. He pulled Wang Sheng and walked towards the back of the house, saying as they went, "Originally, my dad was going to arrange someone to bring your dad some New Year's goods and bonuses, but I heard that you came back from Chuzhou yesterday, so I took the opportunity to meet my old classmate." Ba Dong's words clearly intended ingratiation. Since his father was dismissed from his position and Ba Dong's father took over as the director of the brick and tile factory, Ba Dong had been indifferent to him for a long time. Only after he was admitted to Chuzhou Teachers College did Ba Dong's attitude change significantly. At that moment, seeing that Wang Sheng was still carrying a winnowing fan on his shoulder, Ba Dong took the initiative to help him take it off. "Let's go take a walk on the river beach." Wang Sheng hesitated for a moment and accepted Ba Dong's suggestion. Then the two walked side by side from the house's hilltop towards the riverbank and soon arrived at the riverside. Although it was already noon, the sky appeared gloomy due to the thick clouds obscuring the sun, resembling a person with a frowning brow. The river flowed gently without ripples, looking from afar like an elongated mirror or a strip of azure silk. The sandbar in the center of the river protruded slightly above the water, its contours resembling a woman's body, soft and graceful. A barge carrying coal was sailing downstream, and the sudden blaring of its horn startled a flock of wild ducks perched on the sandbar into flight. "You know I transferred to Central Chu High School, right?" Ba Dong looked at the wild ducks that had taken flight and only then retracted his gaze, saying to Wang Sheng, "I originally wanted to come to the teacher's college to visit you, but now you're a university student. I repeated 2 years but still didn't get in, so I'm embarrassed to bother you." Ba Dong's words sounded sincere, and Wang Sheng felt somewhat embarrassed. He had no choice but to say encouragingly, "Don't lose heart. The college entrance examination pass rate in Chuzhou is among the best in the province. You will definitely pass next year. Zhang Tianyi's sister, Gu Zheng, is also in Chuzhou. He has now become an entrepreneur. By the way, haven't you two met before?" "Yes, I have. He came to my dad that time, wanting to sell coal to the brick and tile factory. Gu Zheng's grades are so good. How can I compare?" Ba Dong smiled bitterly and said with a hint of inferiority, "You don't have to comfort me. I know my own abilities, and I'm far from Chuzhou Middle School's level. If it weren't for my dad giving gifts to the education bureau and school leaders, they definitely wouldn't have wanted me. I really don't want to repeat my senior year anymore. You know, I'm not cut out for studying. All roads lead to Rome. Why should I cling to the tree of the college entrance examination?" But my dad insisted that I repeat my senior year, and I argued with him a lot about it. Wang Sheng looked at Ba Dong's dejected expression and was momentarily speechless. He could understand Ba Dong's feelings. He thought to himself, if I were to repeat my studies for several years and still fail to get into university, my mood wouldn't be any better than his. But he didn't know how to comfort Ba Dong. He wasn't the kind of person who was good at perfunctory responses and pretense. It seemed that Ba Dong didn't expect comfort from others. He just wanted to find someone to pour out his inner depression, right? "You know, your father has been suing my father for years, accusing him of corruption, deliberately raising the prices of bricks and tiles, arbitrarily dismissing workers and delaying their wages. Your father even blamed my father for the farmers' inability to afford brick and tile houses." Ba Dong suddenly changed the topic, raising his voice slightly. "Actually, my father can't be blamed for this. The brick and tile factory was contracted to my father, who followed the instructions from above and acted according to the commodity economy's laws. If it had been done as your father suggested, the brick and tile factory would have collapsed long ago. In the past 2 years, I haven't been clear about my father's affairs at all," Wang Sheng said vaguely. "I heard from my dad that your dad recently gathered some dismissed workers from the factory to write a joint letter to his former superiors and comrades in arms at the central and provincial levels, accusing my dad. My dad has never done anything to hurt Uncle Wang, and he has always respected your dad." Ba Dong frowned tightly and said to Wang Sheng in a pleading tone, "Old classmate, let's not beat around the bush. Can you help persuade your dad? This is also for his own good. After all, he's so old. Besides, my dad gives your dad a bonus and New Year's goods every spring festival. Why is he so obsessed with my dad?" Ba Dong's words sounded reasonable and compelling, leaving him speechless and unable to defend his father. Wang Sheng realized that Ba Dong had come to see him not just to catch up with an old classmate, but to lobby on behalf of his father. Wang Sheng suddenly found that Ba Dong was as shrewd as his father, the factory director, resembling him in both tone and demeanor. It was hard to connect him with the mischievous, scheming, and consistently poor-performing classmate from his childhood. 5. Chinese New Year. After Wang Sheng and Badong parted ways at the river and returned home, Wang Shengli stared straight at him and asked, "What did Ba say to you?" Wang Sheng said evasively, "I didn't say anything." "Don't give me any nonsense. I can see through it. Young Ba and old Ba are cut from the same cloth," Wang Shengli snorted. Wang Sheng initially didn't want to bring up this matter for fear of another dispute. However, upon hearing his father say that, he couldn't help but retort, "What's wrong with someone giving you a New Year's bonus?" Ba Guangming is a weasel paying New Year's greetings to chickens. He has no good intentions. Wang Shengli's voice suddenly rose several degrees. After Ba Guangming contracted the brick and tile factory, he raised the factory price of bricks and tiles by more than 2 times. Who can afford it? That's not all. Ba Guangming arranged for all his relatives to work in various factory departments. The price is halved when relatives, friends, and leaders buy bricks and tiles. Ba Guangming built a Western-style building in the town himself, and the bricks and tiles he used didn't cost a penny. Wang Sheng interrupted his father and said, "You've already retired. Why bother with these trifles?" "What are you talking about?" Wang Shengli was infuriated by his son's words and glared at him. "I may be retired, but I am still a Communist Party member. Chairman Mao once said that the philosophy of the Communist Party is the philosophy of struggle. As long as I live, I will fight to the end against those corrupt elements who undermine socialism and harm the interests of the masses." Wang Sheng looked at his father's righteous and stern expression and knew that if he continued to talk, he would end up arguing with him again. So he had to remain silent. But Wang Shengli's righteous indignation erupted like a volcano deep in his heart. He continued to say to his son, "In recent years, the brick and tile factory has been operating at a loss on the surface, but Ba Guangming still takes his contract bonus as usual. Not to mention bonuses, the workers' wages have been repeatedly delayed, and they were not paid even during the Chinese New Year. The workers went to the town, but the town leaders benefited from Ba Guangming and protected him. The workers have no choice but to come to me. Can I not care?" He became more and more angry as he spoke, turned around and went into the inner room, took out a stack of letters and shook them in front of Wang Sheng. "Look, these are the replies from my former leaders and comrades in arms. Just wait, the day to investigate Ba Guangming is not far away." Wang Sheng took the letter from his father and opened an envelope signed General Office of the Central Military Commission. "Comrade Wang Shengli, the head of the town has received your letter and those from the public regarding the corruption issue of Ba Guangming, the director of the brick and tile factory in Pai Town. It has been transferred to the petition department for handling under regulations. This letter, salute, General Office of the Central Military Commission, 198X year X month X day." Next, Wang Sheng opened another envelope of Dongjiang Daily. "Comrade Wang Shengli, I received your joint letter with some workers from the Pai Town brick and tile factory today. I have forwarded it to the relevant leaders of the Provincial Party Committee, hoping that it will receive sufficient attention from the higher authorities. You have made outstanding military achievements for the liberation of New China, which is worthy of my learning. On the new long march, your spirit of adhering to the truth and continuing the revolutionary struggle is also worthy of my learning. Back then, we jointly raised the 5-starred red flag on the roof of the customs building in Chuzhou City. Today, I am willing to continue to struggle with you and carry out the revolution to the end. Handshake, comrade in arms, Luo Zheng, 1980 X year X month X day." Wang Sheng was quite familiar with the name Luo Zheng. He had heard countless times about the story of his father and comrades planting the first 5-starred red flag at Kuomintang's city defense headquarters. Wang Sheng silently returned the letter to his father. He knew it represented his father's lifelong glory, which he had significantly admired as a child. Now, however, he felt a deep sense of estrangement, but that was all. He had no right to offend his father's dignity. "Now, do you understand why Yang Ba sent me New Year's goods and bonuses?" Wang Shengli carefully packed the letters as if they were precious treasures, and said with a hint of pride, "Not long ago, Ba Guangming ordered people to throw bricks at our roof in the middle of the night, and our main gate was also slashed several times. They wanted to intimidate me. When they couldn't do it by force, they tried to buy me off with sugar-coated bullets. No way! What they can't get on the battlefield, they won't get in private either." Wang Sheng felt that his father sounded like a stubborn and willful child when he said these words. His original intention to ridicule his father vanished into thin air. On the morning of the first day of the Lunar New Year, Wang Sheng was awakened by a deafening sound of firecrackers. He knew it was his father setting off firecrackers. Last night was New Year's Eve, and he and his father went to his mother's grave to burn incense and set off a string of firecrackers. The sound of firecrackers coming from Pai Town was rising one after another, each louder than the last, pushing the atmosphere of the Spring Festival to a climax. If it were in his childhood, Wang Sheng would have already climbed out of bed, picked up the remnants of firecrackers on the ground to set off, or gone to play with his friends from the brick and tile factory. Now, Wang Sheng has long lost the enthusiasm of his childhood. Although he woke up early, he was still lying in bed reading. When he returned home, he borrowed a set of Jean-Christophe from the school library. This was a required reading assigned by his foreign literature teacher. He planned to finish reading it during the holidays, but had only completed the second volume so far. Wang Sheng loved this novel. The description of Jean-Christophe's life in his youth in the book always made him involuntarily think of his own youth. The two wealthy children suddenly developed a childish, cruel, and inexplicable aversion towards the poor boy. Seeing that he remained silent, they became even bolder and wanted to torture him with some amusing methods. The little girl was particularly unrelenting. She noticed that Christophe couldn't run in his tight clothes, so she had an idea and asked him to play a game of jumping over a fence. They piled small stools to make a fence and asked Christophe to jump over it. The poor boy didn't dare to say why he couldn't jump, so he gathered his strength and lunged forward, immediately falling to the ground while surrounded by laughter. They asked him to try again. With tears in his eyes, he made a desperate effort and jumped over. Just as Wang Sheng was reading, he heard a loud commotion coming from the main room outside. When his father was still the director of the brick and tile factory, on the morning of the first day of the Lunar New Year, cadres and workers who came to pay their respects to his father were always in a continuous stream, crowding the entire room. Since his father retired, such a scene had never appeared again. Especially after moving to the river beach, it was even rarer for people to come to this remote wilderness with no nearby villages or shops to pay their respects to his father. Wang Sheng was somewhat puzzled, so he closed the book, put on his clothes, walked out of the door, and saw the main room filled with people. Most of them were already old, and many of them were former workers of the brick and tile factory. They surrounded his father, frequently clasping their hands and bowing, congratulating him on the new year, muttering, "Old factory director," and showing respect towards his father. His father was all smiles, chatting with them hand in hand, as intimate as a family. After a while, his father suggested, "Let's send our New Year greetings to Chairman Mao." So, people automatically formed two lines behind his father and bowed to the portrait of Chairman Mao in the central hall. His father stood at the forefront, giving orders like a commander. Wishing the great leader Chairman Mao a happy new year. 1 bow. 2 bows, 3 bows. This was a scene that Wang Sheng often saw when he was young. His father neither worshipped the god of wealth nor the bodhisattva, but every New Year's Day morning, he would light a stick of incense in front of the portrait of Chairman Mao in the center of the living room. Then, holding Wang Sheng's hand, he would bow 3 times to Chairman Mao, muttering to himself, "Wishing the great leader Chairman Mao a happy new year. 1 bow, 2 bows, 3 bows. After so many years, Wang Sheng unexpectedly saw this scene again. From the first day to the second day of the Lunar New Year, people came to pay their respects to my father every day. During those few days, my father was in excellent spirits. He would get up before dawn, prepare tea and snacks for guests, and then put on that old military uniform that he usually folded neatly in a box. He would wait at the door for people to come and pay their respects. Once, my father even dragged Wang Sheng, who was reading in his room, out and introduced him to everyone with great fanfare. "This is my son, who is studying at university in Chuzhou and will go on to pursue graduate studies in the provincial capital." Those old workers whose faces were darkened by the sun and whose ages could be considered as uncles or elders of Wang Sheng gave him a thumbs up and praised him profusely. Some even offered him lucky money. When Wang Sheng saw the hands with nails filled with dirt, crumpling the notes and stuffing them into his pocket, a warm current suddenly surged up in his heart. After the new year, Wang Sheng went back to school.